Dana, will you take the roll, please? Trustee Hanky, your name's being called.
We're roll call.
Yeah, no, believe me.
Here.
I'm there with you. Yeah,
Here.
for a reason.
I'm a wordsmith,
Here.
not a numbers.
Trustee Solid,
Here.
President Lamont,
Here.
Trustee Ehrlich,
Here.
Trustee Goldberg,
Present.
Trustee Salzer,
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Adoption of the agenda. We have a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt.
Second,
Second.
any discussion or changes?
Yes. Oh,
Is that a yes?
agenda, no, agenda's fine.
No discussion, no changes, okay?
Let's see, I had spoken with Dana earlier today about item 10, old business, item B. I think we really are talking about,
I made a correction.
but I think we are talking about the ordinance.
We're actually,
Yes.
theoretically, it's both.
It's both.
Okay.
I talked with David earlier, we went back and looked at past minutes,
Pull the minutes.
so you were not incorrect. I just wanted to point that out. So therefore, no, I'm not gonna suggest any changes in the, just wanted to note that. for the-
Any other comments on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes of the last meeting. We have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any comments about the minutes?
I have a comment. Yep, I'm good. The January, do we have January minutes in here too?
No, this was a month ago, yeah.
Wait, I thought January was canceled.
January's
No, it
here.
wasn't.
Oh, they had
We
it.
moved a lot of
Oh,
items
that's right,
to,
Okay.
we only had 4 people here, so we
Right.
moved a lot of the business to this meeting.
Right.
Right.
So what do we typically
Any-
do? If
so-
you weren't there, do you not vote? Do you abstain if you weren't at the meeting? How do we usually do that?
That's a good question. If you weren't there, you abstained?
Correct.
Correct, okay. Any, no comments on the,
January minutes, I am both present at the meeting and absent from the meeting, so I noticed that. So, I do cover all grounds, so I appreciate that.
Same with you, David.
I move to approve the minutes from January 8th, and I was here.
I'll second.
okay,
But
Does say,
How would you roll call?
so,
it does say David
it
and
says
Mark.
David Goldberg and
present
Mark were
and
both there. You got it, okay.
Where's it?
I know,
David,
that's what I'm saying. I'm
David, you were
very-
not present, right? Oh,
Oh, and
you were
it.
present in
Yeah,
absence, you're
present
pretty
and
good, buddy.
David also, yeah.
Okay, so we had 4 people here. Do those 4 people approve of the minutes? Say
With-
aye.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you need
Minor
to
change.
change the
Any,
minutes.
any of the 4 people not approve? They're approved.
Where's Pam?
Yeah, where's Pam?
I'm right here.
No, but I'm
here.
present. You're on the roll call, right, because we had 4 people there at roll.
Your name isn't up
You
here.
gotta add Pam to present.
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
So the motion is to
there's
approve the
just the 4 of
minutes,
us.
striking from item 2, present David Goldberg, Mark Hanke, and
Adding
adding
Pam.
Pam
Pam.
Hanson.
Okay. Gotcha.
Jeez.
That was hard.
So these are approved as amended. Okay, let's move on. Public requests and
You didn't take
comments.
action.
I'm sorry?
You didn't
We
take
gotta
action.
vote.
Yeah, we voted.
Yeah, we voted.
We want to vote on the amended adding Pam?
You have to say all in favor.
All in favor, yeah.
Aye.
Okay, got it. Public requests and comments. Do we have anybody with public requests and comments? Please come up, identify yourself. and-
Hi, I'm Ankita Vyas. I'm from 24501 Franklin Park Drive, 13 and Telegraph, that
Are we
intersection.
timing?
We only have a couple. Go ahead.
So I'm here for my ditch. So since I'm on the corner, everybody's trash collects and the water just overflow whenever it's rain and snow melts. So in summer, it's the grass. So everybody has grass on their ditch, and whenever they cut the grass, it flows and it collects there. People throw their trash, water bottle, food waste, food boxes, beer cans, and I have to clean that. and now people started throwing their dog waste.
All
And,
ends up on your property?
yeah,
What are your address again?
24501,
01.
yes.
Right,
And-
This is something we can get into, and we just had a meeting about this, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's timely.
And I have went to the office in the summer about this and in the fall. So whenever I walk my dog and I see on the Franklin Park Drive, people don't pick up their dog waste, or if they put it in a bag, they leave the bag right there. And I've complained about it, and it's illegal per the Michigan state law. And I said I will put sign, and they said I cannot put a sign about it, so I don't know what to do. It's,
Okay, you're the first house.
Let us-
You're the first house.
Yeah,
yeah,
okay. Thanks for your comments. We'll
okay.
see what we can figure out here.
So I am planning on covering the ditch, so I don't have to clean every few months.
Well, that's an issue. We got to talk about that.
Right, but
Don't fill it in. We'll
Yeah.
talk to you about it
Okay.
and figure out a way to make it work.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
So as a point of, just as a point of order, when a resident has a chronic problem with people dumping and not cleaning up after the dog, what is our typical response on that, Roger?
Well, code enforcement follows up and chats with the folks to the extent that it's a chronic problem with neighbors not being responsible about how they deal with their dogs. That's another issue because it's hard to deal with it unless you see it. And the opposite side of that is to do some sort of marketing of regards your responsibility as a dog owner. And try to spend some time looking around at times when people are walking their dogs in that particular area and see what we find. There's several different ways that we would approach it.
I've got a couple of ideas that I can share with you after about dealing with this, because we deal with this in my other job in Arizona. And we have some very specific and very successful ways of dealing with it, so.
But certainly our weekly newsletter is also got to be a reminder. And there's some cute ways I'm sure Dana will come up with.
Okay,
to
thank,
Get that message out.
And the ditch you're talking about is on Franklin Park Drive, not 13 Mile?
You let your dog poop and
Thank you.
clean it up, you're an idiot. And then
Okay, any other public requests and comments?
rather that, but at least clean it up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Phillips. I'm here representing the Franklin Baseball and Softball League. I think everyone may know about us. We've been around since 1955. We played the majority of our games in the fields back here, been around since the 50s. And we've got a brand-new board involved, and we just wanted to come. Myself, I'm new to the board, and kind of reintroduce ourselves. We're trying to revamp the league, get it going again, continue on our success and hopefully last another 70 years. Would love to have some conversations about how we can continue to use and maintain the fields behind us, promote, since we are a community-based recreational league that supports ages from kindergarten, t-ball, all the way up to ninth grade, pony ball. So, and then we would love to have some engagements and partnerships with the community as we have opening day weekend festivals. Wanted to try to restart some things that we had, I think, done in the past that we'd like to continue and re-engage with the community, local businesses, and re-engage with the league and the community. So this just really wanted to introduce myself, our board, and love to work together with you guys going forward.
Jeremy, thank you for coming.
Yep.
My daughter's been engaged with Franklin softball and baseball for years. I know that DeMarco's for many years too, so I'd love to talk to you about some ideas.
Great. Yeah, and you all had an event this weekend, right?
Yes, we've had, tried to have several events. We just had one this weekend in Troy.
Wonderful. My family attended it. It was fantastic. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, I think an easy partnership to start off with is including any of the events that you're hosting in the village update. So,
And the other thing that the FCA needs to be in communication with you too, because we can do a family fun day or something on a same day, and we can try to coordinate things.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
please reach out. I mean, you can give me your email, write it down and give it to me. That would be great. Or,
Yeah, you can reach us at franklinbaseball@comcast.net.
okay.
Jeremy, we've talked about the opening day coincides with the beginning of our bicentennial celebration stuff. So there's things that we think we can all do together to celebrate our history. Baseball was a big thing in Franklin, and it still is, so.
Exactly.
Cool, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other public requests and comments? If not, let's move on to reports of village officers and agents. Dan Roberts. Got to wake Dan up out there? Oh, he's awake, I'm sorry.
Hello again, everybody. Good evening. You have our written submission, at least I hope you do. Not much to report in terms of crime from January, and so I will not rehash what's in the report, which is mostly traffic-related arrests and offenses, drunk driving and the like. I do want to mention that we have really begun in earnest working on our budget for the next fiscal year. We have been contacting all our insurance carriers, healthcare, liability, you name it. The numbers are not pretty there, so I just want to give you the heads up. 5 to 7% increases, especially in healthcare, is anticipated across the board there. Other things such as vehicle expenses, as you know from the last purchase, was up quite a bit year on year. Just buying police cars has become much more expensive. So I am not painting a rosy picture for you for our fiscal year budget for next year. The other item that makes it a challenging budget for us is that the officers' union contracts come up at the end of this calendar year, which is halfway through the fiscal year. So it's hard to project what, if any, increase there will be for those first 6 months of 2025. So we're going to look at that, working with Roger and his team, trying to come up with some good projections there. But if you have any suggestions, we're happy to take those. I just want to give you the heads up that virtually every category in our 30-plus line item of our budget is up year on year based on the research we've done so far. We have to have our budget done earlier than what Franklin requires. As you know, Bingham Farms, their charter is such that their budget's done a couple of months before ours. And so we're on a time crunch to at least give them some preliminary numbers by the end of this month, and so we will do that. They are aware, however, that those are not locked in stone until you as council approve them, but they do need to get their budget going soon. So I'll be providing Bingham Farms with my numbers certainly by the end of this month. If anybody would like to know the preliminary numbers, I'd be glad to send them to you when I get them done later this week as well.
No doubt we'll have a finance committee meeting within the next couple of months. If we could have whatever it is you're giving Bingham
Absolutely.
Farms for that meeting,
Yep.
that's going to help us a lot as we consider the early stages of this budget planning.
Absolutely. I'll
Thank
give
you.
you a written submission for every line item before your finance committee
Okay,
meeting.
thanks.
Yep. Any other?
Questions for Dan?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony, fire department.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I wanted to thank Chief Roberts for talking about the budget, so I won't cover that. But ours looks just as wonderful as theirs. So, with that in mind, I did send Mr. Frazier as well as the village manager for Bingham Farms, Ken Martin, an email along with our fire liaisons with regard to our budget process, which is going to be changing a little bit this year. So, Mr. Frazier will get with you separately, Well, unless you want to do that now.
Let me follow up on that for just a minute. What they're looking for is an opportunity to have a discussion with a couple of their fire board members,
Yes.
a couple of people involved, preferably a couple of council members, along with probably me, sitting down and talking about how all of this stuff is playing out for the fire department for the coming year. And he was seeking some perspectives that he doesn't typically have when he's working on his budget with just his board. So he had offered up Wednesday and Thursday this week?
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, well, Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay, then.
And if there's a couple of you who are available, is there a time of day that you were shooting at?
You tell me.
All
So
right.
this would just be the fire department in the village of Franklin. if there's a couple of you who are interested in spending a couple of hours sitting down and chatting about that with the fire department, let me know. Okay? Good.
So the intent is not to bypass the Public Meetings Act and not have too many council members, so there's no quorum, but to have some insight as to what's going on with obviously the same process taking place. So, other than that, I wanted to bring up one other item, which was a follow-up from about 4 months ago. Administrator Frazier and I met with a contractor out of the city of Ann Arbor, former Parks and Recs director, or no?
No,
Yeah.
he's senior advisor.
Senior advisor, okay. He owns his own company now, and he uses prescribed burning to remove invasive species from properties. He was hired by a resident on Watley to perform this act, this service, and the intent is to use prescribed methods that are approved by the state of Michigan in order to get rid of these invasive species. So he had presented with the village and the fire department his plan, his concept, history of his company, and some brochures and some website links to the state of Michigan.
Also had some videos, if I recall.
He did. There's all kinds of stuff. There's lots of time on the off season, I guess. But it was to come to create a plan for within the village of Franklin, so that when he is able to burn, he would be doing that. The request was also made for the fire department to stand by just in case there's any issues. So there's a water source on the property. There is a home that's in play, but we would also provide another water source if needed. So we haven't finalized anything. I'm just waiting on the weather to start turning towards the end of winter, whenever that is, so that way we can have these follow-on discussions so he can get his work done. The initial concept, though, is a little unique to us because while we do have an burn ordinance for yard waste, this is a little different in scope. So it's not that the ordinance precludes it, but I don't think the ordinance even covers this type of activity. Obviously, this contractor is fully insured. All of the personnel that will be working for him or with him are covered under his insurance. So I personally don't see any issue with it. I just don't have the final plan to present. So everything that I will do is going to be working hand in hand with the village administration to make sure that everything not only happens efficiently and effectively, but also safely. That's my
Someone in the
biggest
village did this?
No.
They're
concern.
planning.
No, planning to in the spring.
Opposed?
Yes.
So,
Yes, sir.
we're gonna trust your guidance on that, obviously, so that's fine.
I wouldn't, but.
No, we will. So I guess only, assuming permission is granted and some plan is developed, I guess the only thing I would say is, let's have some awareness for the neighbors, so they have awareness of what's going on next to them.
Yeah, and we discussed that. The village maintains a mailing list, so there would be, and I think from what we discussed, it would be at the contractor's time and expense to grab the mailing labels to send out to the neighbors, not only beforehand through the mail, but also put up signage. So anyone seeing anything that's happening that day would see that this is a prescribed burn.
And then there's always been follow-up questions, if this neighbor has these plants, do I have the plants in my yard too? So, interesting.
It's way beyond, I burn stuff down for a living and try and prevent it, but I use an app to find what plants are and what weeds are. But I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how they got to where they got. Maybe you would have some insight on that.
At some point, I'm sure neighbors will start asking those questions,
Yeah,
whoever next to this person.
They
Okay.
perfected their techniques in Ann Arbor.
Yes.
And one of the things that he talked about was the process that they had for notification of the community around this particular site and describing what happens and so forth.
I understand a lot of weed gets burned in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, it does. And it's a controlled burn.
After all these years, man.
I know you'll do the right thing, Tony. So,
Look at the time.
Last question, Tony.
Yes, sir.
There was a manhole fire
I was
last
gonna
week,
ask that,
last
yeah.
Monday. Any
Yes, there was.
conversation about that?
That was a Detroit Edison issue. It was in the city of Southfield, 12 Mile, and I'm really glad you brought that up. So
almost
it
Telegraph, yeah.
happened over at 12 Mile and between Telegraph and Lasser, I believe. Edison, in order to repair the damage and stop the fire, ended up shutting off power to both villages. I live up in the township, so I was not impacted by that, but was called out because 13 and Telegraph became dark very quickly. And the people who decided to not create a four-way stop ending up created a four-vehicle collision. So we made sure to close the intersection for about an hour while we cleaned that up. And then power was out for about 24 hours, and then when it came back on the next evening, we got a tremendous number of fire alarms going off just because of the power.
I was in one of those office buildings out 30, you know, off
Yeah.
Bingham Farms when they went out.
Yeah, I was waiting for the elevator rescues, but thank goodness it happened after hours, so we didn't have
So the
any.
question, the follow-up question will be.
Yes.
Caused by DTE, I guess with all the issues DTE has plagued us in the village, we'd be interested in like, were there procedures not followed that should have been followed by DTE that caused this to happen? So in other words, what should they have done to make sure it doesn't happen again? So I'm not asking an answer now, but I'm going to ask the answer for DTE.
I would, providing an assumption, and this is just an assumption, is that this is more akin to an infrastructure issue, because this was an underground fire. This was not caused by trees, this was not caused by limbs falling, the wind blowing. This truly was underground, and this was a transmission line, so this was a very, very high voltage line.
So
It was burning.
I'm asking, you know, DTE owes you an explanation of what happened, what went right, what went wrong, let's not make sure it never happens again.
I can follow it up, and I'll provide to Roger a response based on what I get, but historically, I don't carry the same power as a council.
Well,
but I will ask.
Well, step one is I'm going to ask you as fire chief.
Yeah.
You deserve an answer. They caused
I will-
fire.
I'll follow up.
In an intersection. They put up power for a day for thousands
Right.
of people. So
Right.
we owe it.
No, understood.
And
Understood.
So we're owed a solid answer from DT. What went wrong?
And I will ask.
Thank you.
I will
Roger,
ask.
you have connections with DTE too.
Well, and
Yeah.
interestingly, you recall that we've had in the last couple of years, a couple of meetings with folks from DTE.
Right.
And one of the things that you punched DTE pretty hard on was the fact that communities like Franklin, who lose power as a consequence of a DTE event, are impacted more than communities in Southfield or elsewhere that don't rely on wells. So, for what it's worth, and I think I emailed you about this, but DTE showed up with a community service team. They had 4 people out here, and they had a truck full of bottled water, and they were answering questions for anybody who came by about what it is that's going on, and if they need more water, they would provide it. And the people who were representing DTE were very articulate and very forthcoming about what was going on and what they're trying to do. I thought it was impactful considering the conversations we've had with them before.
More responsive than.
Yeah.
Right.
So those are nice. Those are good social things to do. But they owe us a written answer. What went wrong? That caused a fire. That caused an accident. That caused a power outage.
Okay. We'll go after it.
Yep.
Very good.
So can I add one?
Sure. You can add 2.
Okay. The first would be, with reference to those with generators, we did respond to several calls regarding carbon monoxide issues. One of them was unfounded, however, the other was based on the generator exhausting toward the house, which is not a new issue, but it is an issue that needs to be looked at. And I would say for anyone listening to this, if you have a generator at your home, it's going to run on its own every week as a test. See where the exhaust goes to, because if it's going towards your house, while it may meet the requirements for the building code and the plumbing code and the electrical code, it may also be putting carbon monoxide into your dwelling. There are simple things you can do to alleviate that, but now is a great time to do it rather than waiting until an incident occurs.
That's a good idea. That makes me think the deputy chief came for a while ago talking about customer service. So those kinds of things with like a carbon monoxide sniffer, you could. That's something we can do as a community to offer that to go test it. You know.
Well, Consumers Energy will also do that, but there's an entire dispatch protocol for anyone who's having the issue. However, to go out on a day-to-day basis when anyone's testing their generator may may not work out so well, because you have to have the generator running, you have to be in the house, and have a carbon monoxide meter. The problem that we have is just the number of generators. It becomes a little bit much. In the case of one of ours, I believe this was the second time we responded for the same type of incident. So after we educated them the first time, I believe they decided to do nothing towards resolving it. So we have no legal authority.
Were the responses that you went out to all like the permanent whole home
Yeah.
generators?
Yeah, yeah. This time.
Yeah.
We've had other incidents
Right.
where people
Yep.
are using the portables. And the second, I totally eludes me what I was gonna, I was gonna make.
You can
mention,
come
so-
back.
So now, I'll be here next month.
Okay. Thanks, Tony.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, Lance, treasurer's report?
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as a village treasurer. The bills list report for this month totals $268,158.04. The amounts on the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending, and the expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. The bills list for this month includes a large entry of $47,919. It's for a 2023 Ford Explorer utility vehicle we paid to Gorno Ford. That was for the police department. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations, and the list of account balances in the package is as of February the 1st. We hold at First Merchant Bank. Any questions?
I'm referring to our earlier discussion during the workshop.
Yeah.
Roger mentioned probably an outstanding balance of around $500,000 of ARPA funds. My question's going to be about short-term investments. If there's that much money sitting there, where is it? Do we actually have it? What are we doing with it?
Go ahead, Roger.
We have an ongoing investment program that takes, I've forgotten how many of our dollars on a weekly basis and has that in various.
I'm really familiar with
investment
that one,
protocols.
yeah.
And that would include the ARPA funds.
It does,
Yeah.
okay. And don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious about how we're doing on those investments, and does it show up anywhere on your financial reports?
I can get you a written statement of how we're doing, what we're earning, et cetera, and I can
Yeah.
have that to you in the next few days.
I'm really
That'd be good
interested
to
in
know.
that.
Yeah.
Because we made
Sure.
that change a few years ago, and I think it's been really positive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in the interest of really making use of our money that's not being,
Yeah, I'll give you an update this week.
that'd be great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Lance? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Lance.
We have a bills list. Do we have a motion to approve payment to the bills?
I'll second.
Motion second. Any questions, comments?
What was the electrical inspection performed?
I don't have it in front of me, so I'm,
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's Ron Shelton.
yeah, he is our electrical inspector. So he gets
Just
paid
this
for
building,
each inspection that's done.
Oh, okay, all right,
Electrical permits.
okay, thank you.
So I had one question. HRC, Carroll Street Chain. So what are we still have much going on, or is that paying for a
That's
prior
paying for
bill?
work that was done actually
Okay.
last fall.
Yeah, okay, I didn't think we were still doing anything.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
We had people on site during that effort, and that would have been HRC's expense related to the Carroll Street ring.
What do we have with that?
Any other questions? All in favor of approving the bills list, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The last year's audit, we see Raina Emmons is out there. Raina, you want to walk us through your masterpiece here?
Good evening, and nice to see everyone this evening. Again, my name is Raina Emmons. I'm a partner with PSLZ. My pleasure to be here with you this evening. We have a good report. The village did receive an unmodified audit opinion, which is the highest level of audit opinion you can receive. No exceptions, disclaimer, nothing bad to report to you this evening. Just starting off with a few highlights. The taxable values increased, so starting with property taxes, your largest source of revenue. The property tax values increased 3.82% this year. The year before was 2.45, just to give you an indication, so we're really happy to see that trend. I think it's going to jump again the next year's report, which you're already living those tax bills right now, but that's probably going to be closer to 5%. So that's all very healthy. State share revenue was pretty much break even from the year before. That, of course, is the sales and income taxes the state collects and distributes to the local units. So that was pretty flat this year. From the prior year, it was a $1,400 increase over the prior year. Investments this year. Well, you know, we haven't had too much to talk about in prior years on the last few years anyway. There's pretty non-existent as far as interest rates, as you were alluding to earlier. But we were up about $2,300 in interest this year, just in the general fund alone. So definitely we're taking advantage of that. Thank you to Treasurer Vanek for his expertise in keeping an eye on things. It's always very helpful. So general fund balance decreased $334,000. That, of course, was planned. That isn't a surprise. There were things during the year that were notably, the general fund transferred, of course, your usual transfers to the police fund to fund the police department, but also you had a $227,000 transfer to the major street fund to assist with the road improvements. General fund ending fund balance this year was $907,000, which is about 50% of your total expenditures for the year. So that's a nice, healthy fund balance. Also, building department permit revenue, just to give you an indication of the activity within the village. You actually had a pretty big decrease this year in building permit revenue, which I know you're aware of. The year before, you had some substantial residences being built and that type of thing. That was the prior year. So fiscal year 23 that we're in now was a $61,000 decrease in building permit revenues, about 30% down. The major capital outlay this year, road improvements, culvert rehabilitation, of course, the police station roof replacement happened last year, and we purchased one police vehicle. The village did pay down debt substantially, $985,000 in principal this year we paid down, leaving you your outstanding bonds are $9.445 million outstanding on the streetscape road improvement project. The net pension liability shows an increase of $843,000 this year. You're going to look at that and go, well, that's the wrong direction, but there is a reason for that. This year, your MERS pension plan is valued as of December 31st every year. And so this audit it valued your pension trust assets as of December 31st, 2022. Not a good day in the stock market. So we're showing a significant net investment loss in this audit, but the village has regained that. The market has rebounded quite a bit. So you've already recouped that. Next year's report will reflect that. So I don't want you to worry about that, but that really did shift the numbers quite a bit. We have to account for the net pension liability and deferred inflows and outflows. It really moves the numbers. It was like $1 million swing, basically.
Yeah. Is that the page 5, the paragraph?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Sure.
And that is talking about the full accrual numbers, meaning all the pension liability, post-retiree healthcare liability, all the debt is rolled into those numbers. So, but the biggest swing is really net investment income. Of course, you did receive, you're at 48.1% funded at the end of the year, which is not where you want to be. You want to be a little higher than that. But you did receive the Michigan Pension Grant this year, which is not in this audit. It'll be in next year's audit. But that will definitely help. That'll be a significant help in moving the needle. That plus hopefully some net investment income. I believe we had a good day in the stock market, 12/31/2023, from what I recall about a month ago. So that like I said, hopefully we'll have a good report on that. Ending with other post-retiree healthcare liability, net liability is $319,000 this year. You're about 70% funded, so nothing to worry about there. I'd really want you to focus on the pension.
Questions?
Yes.
Is there more?
No, I'm happy to take any
So,
questions.
Looking at page 5, we're talking about 2022 versus 23. Property taxes went down about 400K. Am I reading that correctly? Property taxes, general revenues went down from 2.9 to 2.5 million on page 5. Page 5, property taxes, 2.9 to 2.5.
Is there something we didn't collect this year? Brittany, do you remember what that would be?
I mean, 400K of property taxes is a big drop.
It is. That's, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So the fire department taxes and the library taxes that you used to collect, well, you still collect them, but we used to treat them as special revenue funds. So they are probably included in the 2.9 number. Now we treat them as custodial funds. Basically, we're treating them now in this audit as in and out. We collect them, but we give it right out to the fire department and to the library. We're not treating it as funds of the village. And then as if we took them in as revenue and spent them. Now they're in the custodial fund, so it's in and out. It doesn't go through our revenues and expenses. So
No, I'm
that's,
looking at this, I'm trying to look at apples and apples. And
Sure.
you're pretending it's not apples to apples.
this year is not apples to apples.
Okay.
The fire millage and the library millage is not included in 2023.
You're certain that's the reason?
Yes.
It's not even in the
Yes, there really is no.
Are you tracking those, or is there a line item about that to help us understand is there a line item for those custodial funds or a reference somewhere in this report?
It's not detailed, but it is page 19,
Okay, because that
In-
one got right by me.
so it's the current tax collection fund is the column. And so you'll see near the bottom, it says taxes collected for other governments.
Yeah.
So you've collected those and you've distributed them out. And some of that may be, there might be a little bit that goes to the county. So there's 700,000 here. If we're down 400, 500,000 is fire and library. And there's probably a little bit of other things.
I don't see it here. This is just a snapshot. This is not 2022 versus 23. So I don't see.
Correct.
I don't see the change. So I'm looking forward to more explanation later.
Sure, we're happy to provide that.
The second question I have, same page, page 5, under expenses, big shift up. We went 2 million to 3.3 million for public safety, so that's a big change. Plus 1.3, plus 26% or something like that. Can you talk about that $1.3 million shift in public safety expenses upwards?
Yes, so these numbers in this chart on page 5 are considered full accrual. So meaning, again, with all the pension liability and the post-retiree healthcare liability, all the debt of the village and your assets, and assets less depreciation. So this is full accrual, everything's rolled into these numbers. So with the big jump is that net investment loss that I was referring to really does reflect in here. And the pension plan is all police department. So it directly impacts the public safety line.
So I understand how, the market works, but I did not expect to see the $1.3 million change the wrong direction from investments. We didn't sell those investments from day 1 to day 2. So I don't.
Correct. It's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board basis of accounting. They want you to have that snapshot in the middle of the year, not wait until you're actually selling off assets or when you need them. They want you to know with the actuaries, spread out over 30 years of what you're gonna have to pay out in the pension, plus the investments that you have to offset that. So every year you get a snapshot of where you're at with your liability. So that's why we call it the net pension liability. So it's fully loaded minus the assets. I'm sorry.
But we talk about assets changing value of the stock market. I understand assets would drop because you had a bad day, but what we're talking about here is expenses. If we didn't sell the securities, then we didn't have an expense. So I'm still not clear why expenses went up 1.3 million from 2.1 to 3.3.
Sure, there's a chart in the middle of the footnotes. I'm gonna get that for you. So on page 33, there's a chart that shows, it details out exactly what changed in the pension plan. And the first column is total pension liability, and, which is what made the, so if there are experience changes in your pension plan, demographics change, the pool of people changes, that type of thing, change in assumptions, whether it's generated by the state of Michigan, on the assumptions they can use, that goes in, within the first column, total pension liability. Second column.
But this bottom half is all about 2022, it's not about 23.
Well, your December 31st, 22 is the measurement date for the MERS pension plan. That's per MERS. That's they do the measurement.
We can take it offline.
Okay.
I'm not satisfied.
Okay, so you'll see right in the middle of that page, $542,000 is net investment loss that we had this year. And that's a big swing from the year before, where I believe we had a net investment gain of $660,000. So that delta from the $660,000 to the negative 500, there's $1.1 million right there that runs through the books as an expense under that direct public safety line, because it's all police pension. That will fix itself next year, because it's all actuarial.
Is there and maybe this is a happy medium or not, but a better measurement? Like if you were to do it over a 5-year average and then compare it against the 5-year average compared to,
We do use the 5-year smooth market.
Yeah.
So that you don't take the hit all in 1 year, but that is how the actuaries have, that's including the 5-year smooth market.
okay.
That, we have pieces called the deferred inflows and outflows, and that's really the offsets of that, but still the net of all that was still, $1 million in the wrong direction. But like I said, hopefully 6 months from now, I'll have a report for you that shows completely the other way. And if not, we'll talk.
Where is the year-over-year comparison of building permits, building fund revenue?
We don't have a year over year. Page 47 is the detail on the building department fund. So that it's not comparative, though, with prior years.
You had mentioned that our pensions were funded 41% end of 2023.
48.1%.
What was it in 2022? Did it go up or down?
It was 56.3, so it went down a bit.
So
It impacts that.
you started off saying we have good news, but we went down our funding by 15%. Our expenses went up 1.3 million. And our,
Well, that's all related, though. That's all related to pension.
yeah, but I mean, we lost ground in funding our pensions, 15%. That's a big deal.
But we did get the Michigan pension grant, which is, and our investments have recuperated during 2023. So that's why I'm saying this is not something that would keep me up at night if I'm a village council member.
And I would just add to that, it's a little troubling because we had made a commitment to add additional funding to pensions, and yet we still lost ground on that. I'm fine with the factoring in of the grant, but that's like a one-time thing.
Correct.
And our concern is, how do we manage? Is there some change in the way we should be managing the village assets?
The only other way that you're going to bring it up is to do lump sum contributions.
That's what we did. We added money last year for that purpose to accelerate our payments.
And when, depending on what
Is that right,
time of year,
Well, I think we'd committed to doing it 50,000 a year. Do you remember?
I don't remember that detail and when we did it, but we also were aware during the course of this last fiscal year that we were eligible for this contribution from the state. And it would not have been timely for us to put our money in there until we saw what we were getting from the state, and then what were the implications for
I
how
remember
you
that
account for that.
conversation. Yeah.
And we've just recently, within the last month, received specific instructions on how to account for that contribution in terms of your overall revenues for the village.
right, so that's 100% accurate, Roger, and now I'm remembering that we did hold back a little bit because If you were at 60% or even 61%, you were no longer eligible for that grant. So
We
by,
were like 58, I think, weren't we?
You were-
55.
right.
So we had to stay below
Right,
that.
right. So that did actually, I mean, you would you would receive zero. You would not qualified for it. So,
But even with that, we're at 56%, even with the 200 some thousand, we still fell down to 41, so I feel like we really went in the wrong direction.
page 41 is historical information, the last 10 years of your pension plan, and you can see things like your net investment income from year to year. You could see along the bottom there, you'll see the funding status from year to year. And so, again, I would say to you, to bring that number up, we're talking about probably adding $100,000 a year in extra lump sum contributions to the pension. And I would say commit to that for at least 3 years. I mean, that's how you move the needle. You know, some
That's
communities.
That conversation we had in this room 6 months ago about adding money to it, so. But I'm just disappointed that, you know, you let out this conversation saying that we're in good shape, there's nothing to worry about. I mean, losing 15% of the funding is a big deal to me.
But your position today, physically, February 2024, is different than it was on June 30th. So good things have happened since then, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's based on the stock market on December 31st of 2022 and December 31st of 2023, it's significantly up.
So we already know, that's factual, so we already know that you're not in the place you were in December 31st, 2022.
And I know this is a smaller item, but I'm a little concerned or confused about our building department and the funding and revenues declining. It seems like we've had so much construction in the village.
Actually,
And-
that was mentioned earlier.
And are we charging appropriately? I know that this comes up every now and again, and I remind you, we have an estate sale fee of $1, where other communities charge at least $100 for estate sales. I know it's picky, but it comes up because I'm related to that business, and I think we shouldn't bother doing paperwork for $1.
But we've also talked about it as council, that we're not here to make money off our
No,
fees.
it's not making money, it's covering the cost of handling paperwork. You know.
One of the things that has changed in the last 18 months is the number of new house constructions.
Yeah.
We have not had in the last 2 years really large, expensive homes of the ilk of that we have dotted here around. Most of what we're getting more recently is additions, reconstructions, that sort of thing, which does not generate the fees and expenses that the larger houses have. So we went through a period where we had one right after another of really large, expensive homes. And that's diminished. The greenhouse on 13 Mile across the street from her is an example. That thing went from generating no money to 1 year in which we got a whole bunch of building fees. And now all of those fees have pretty well caught up, and we're still having some work that's being done for which we receive fees. But
I mean,
that's
there's a
probably the
huge new
biggest
home
single
on
example.
on Scenic Lane that just completed recently, and, I mean, the Gilbert property, there's always construction.
There's something going on, but compared to the rest of that project,
Okay.
it's not much.
Okay,
So we've looked at it, Bill and I talked about it at length.
yeah.
And it's also reflected in the number of inspections that we're paying for.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
There's a pretty healthy fund balance in that account, too.
No, I know. That just, I was surprised when I saw a reduction, that's all, but, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
are we good, or anything else, Rana? or-
So with that, I would just say, when you're in the budget process, because you really have to look at it as a whole. I mean, if you have the police chief saying that everything's up as far as numbers, you're gonna have to, bake that all in with, and see respectfully if that, if you have room for an extra $100,000
Yeah, mine.
that you'd like to prioritize toward the pension plan, or not.
So, real quick, if you were to look kind of our current position with no extreme variables in a 5-year and 10-year projection, where are we at?
I have not looked at a 5-year projection, but are you talking about the pension plan specifically or the
Well,
general
no,
fund?
I'm talking broadly, right, because I guess if we look at it from the aggregate, we asked for a temporary Band-Aid for our, tax revenues, property tax revenues, that will expire eventually, and we are essentially going to break even because of that. And we hear the police chief talking about the increase of expenses, which is just naturally going to happen.
Right.
But we're not gonna see that in our revenue base, particularly at the expiration of this. And so for me, even if we have comfort in the numbers today, a 5 and 10-year projection is where I think I have a little bit more heartburn.
Well, you definitely needed the extra voted operating millage. That's definitely, that's not going to solve it, like you said, it's more of a Band-Aid. But look at where you'd be if you didn't have that. So that was, fortunately, that was approved. The village has done a very nice job of keeping your operating expenses pretty stable. And, things like, obviously, the police department's kind of the outlier because they have to have it, you have to have it staffed. And it's been hard to find, people to fill the positions, and so you have to offer a little more, or perhaps the benefits are a little, and, benefits are impacting all of us. All our costs are going up as far as health benefits and that type of thing. So, obviously, you have to fund that. And pension plan, of course, you've always had on your radar. So you're doing what you can there. You're in 100% compliance with what the state is requiring you to make as far as contributions go. So you're not triggering anything, any bells or whistles with the state, which is good. But like I said, you've done a nice job of keeping the operating expenditures stable. And that's really, and so you can plan for your capital, any capital things that you want to finish up or do. We need a new roof on us, you can handle that, and you can plan for it. So that's what the budget process is going to be really important for that reason.
Okay.
Okay,
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Rena.
And
Appreciate it.
just thank you to everyone, Susan, Roger, Dana, the staff. Appreciate everyone's assistance. Plant Moran is also a huge help with the audit, so thank you.
Okay.
Make a comment?
On this issue?
Yes. Ms. Emmons, just a quick question, Rich Parada, Village resident. Familiar with some of the budgeting, especially municipal level, and as the council goes through this particular budget, taking a point-in-time approach for investment income, while accurate and appropriate, may not give the council a good understanding of, where do we stand February 28th, 2024, in planning for contributions to be made to the pension fund, for example. So is it possible to provide, we were at 56% 2 years ago, 41%, June 30th, 2023. Is it possible to give them a more accurate point of time at the end of February for their planning purposes?
We can probably get from MERS, the
Yeah.
pension plan, some up-to-date numbers.
Okay.
You definitely have numbers as of, let's see, it's February, they actually probably haven't sent you yet, the December 31st year-end numbers from MERS, but you should be receiving those shortly, but we can put all that
Right.
together and give you the better picture and kind of project out where.
I just think for the council's perspective, some of the issues raised here, it is not
Part of the
unusual.
budgeting process, Rich, is
Yeah,
doing
point in time,
exactly
you get that.
Yep.
The second question, the general fund, the decrease of 334,000, there was also some guidance, and maybe you're going to get to it on the budget resolution, that the council was looking to actually get to more of a balanced budget. Is that general fund only, or what is the anticipation?
Well, the decrease this year in the general fund primarily was the extra contribution to the major street fund. And that was about 250,000, and went down about 300,000, I believe.
Yep.
So that's not something you do every year. That was a planned contribution to help the gas and weight money that the village receives from the state is not enough to get things done. So you supplemented to finish a project in the major street fund. So again, a planned, going back to your operating expenses have, been somewhat stable. The So you want to plan, as much as we can, obviously, things happen, but capital expenditures, that's going to be key to kind of spread, keep those nice and stable and spread out and not have like 1 year, a bunch of things and, you know, being able to, for cash flow purposes and to keep the general fund stable.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so let's move on. We have a budget amendment here, budget amendment for the 2023-24 budget.
Brittany is here to guide you through what it is that this resolution will do. Brittany is with Plant Moran.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'd be interested in hearing what that is.
Okay.
As Roger said, I'm with Plant Moran. I'm assisting administration with the budget process and your accounting. The budget amendments are a normal part of your process. We budget for certain expenditures throughout the year during this time frame a year ago, and council adopted them in June of 2023. However, there's certain expenditures that, you know, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't anticipate them. So amending your budget is a typical part of the process. The budget amendment before you, we're amending the general fund, the major and local streets, the police fund, your wastewater fund, and the building department. Your general fund, you'll see we're amending the revenue by $22,000, and then expenditures by $62,940. So overall, we're amending the budget so that we're having a decrease in fund balance of, an additional decrease of $40,740. So our initial budget anticipated your fund balance to come to be at about $1 million. And with this amendment, we are anticipating that the ending fund balance will be about $964,000. A key component of this amendment is the Michigan pension grant that was mentioned earlier. You received $494,000 with that grant, and we've, based on guidance from the state, we are required to allocate that based on how your pension liability is allocated between the general fund and police. So most of your liability is with the police fund. So a large portion of the pension grant was allocated to the police fund, and $22,000 of it was allocated to the general fund. So if we move, did you have any questions on the general fund? If not, we'll move on to the second page of the amendment. Your major streets, we are amending the budget for your major streets to increase expenditures by $31,900. This brings your fund balance from an anticipated ending fund balance of $197,000 to $166,000. Part of that, or the major component of that, is a payment that is due for the streetscape project. We have reallocated a portion of the budget from your general maintenance line to cover a piece of the payment that's due to them. So instead of increasing expenditures by $46,000, we are only increasing it by $31,900 because we're reallocating a portion of that budget.
From general maintenance?
Yes,
Okay.
from general maintenance.
I've got a question. Is that okay if I ask that?
Yeah.
So we've got you're working on finalizing the payments to ASI and NFE, they're sizable.
Yes.
So will that appear as another budget amendment?
Yes.
Next time around?
Yes. This amendment was with information that we had a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And that has been clarified last week. So we'll be anticipating another budget amendment.
Thank you.
Moving on to your police fund, you'll see the majority of the amendment is to your other state grants for revenue. We're amending that by $456,000. Again, that's your Michigan pension grant. So the vast majority of that money was allocated to the police fund. And under the governmental accounting standards, we're required to gross, even though the village didn't directly receive that funding, we're required to gross up your revenue and expenses to account for that. So you'll see we've increased your revenue by $456,000 to account for that. And then we also have increased the police department expenditures to account for it. There's a couple other amendments to police lines to account for actual projected expenses that we're looking that they're possibly going to go over budget. So that's the difference between the two, between the revenue and the expenditures. Moving on to the next page, you've got your wastewater fund. The majority of this amendment is to recognize ARPA money that you received a couple years ago that we're anticipating spending before the end of the fiscal year. So we are also amending expenditures by $9,500 in anticipation of additional expenses. And then moving on to the building department, we are amending the building department expenditures by $3,900, bringing your budgeted ending fund balance from $734 to $730,000. Any questions?
Questions? Okay. I guess
that
we
was
need,
helpful.
we need a motion to approve
Motion
this
to
resolution.
approve the resolution.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just real quick, we went through a line item a couple months ago, I believe. And Pam, you had asked, I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in the numbers about like, what were the unexpected things? What were the things that should be of interest? And I think even to Rich's point earlier, having something, I have my expertise, this is not it, right? And so having something that's a little bit more digestible with the highlights, I think would go a long way for us to, because again, the budget is always of a concern to me because we don't have a lot of wiggle room within it. And so fully understanding kind of the highlights, I think sets a very good stage to kind of conceptualize what are things that we need to plan for, anticipate, to adjust within the are our numbers right? Because even as we look forward, it's like, yeah, we've maintained operating expenses at the current state. And I guess my looming question that I continue to have is, do we need to, are we going to have to go to our taxpayers and say, like, we absolutely need an increase in our tax base, or of our tax base, in order to cover our expenses, and be able to intelligibly and very simplistically give them the justification that it's not some lavish spending, it's not, you know, it's really the bare bones of what we need as a community, the basic services that you expect, we would need a tax increase for.
I think that's part of the budgeting process that we're about to start here.
Yeah, I'm just saying the last time we went through the budgeting process, I didn't feel prepared for that.
We're going to, Matt?
Sure.
Part of the reason that we've gone to all this detail in this mid-year, this is a budget amendment that's effective for December 31.
Yeah.
And as you can see, there's a variety of things that impact how this will turn out that may be different than what we anticipated because we just didn't know. The good news is that compared to previous years, the amounts of these adjustments are very, very small compared to where we've been in the past. Where the one adjustment in the general fund was it 40,000 or 20?
It was.
40-some pounds.
40.
Yeah.
This adjustment is much less than normal, than most years, so I have no issue with this at all.
They've generally been
It's not
6
an
figures.
issue.
Those adjustments have been 6 figures. And it appears as though we've got much better control over what our expenditures are doing than what we had before. This trend suggests to me, and we had some discussion about this earlier, staff did, do we need to be thinking about a revenue change in 2024? And my suggestion to you is, with these fund balances where they are, probably not. That I think that you're at least another 2 years out before you need to do that. But we're going to have to deal in 2025 with some increases in expenditures in the police department, and we need to be able to weigh that during our budget discussions against other implications for our budget. So as we go through that process, we're going to have some big sheets for you to look at that will give you the opportunity to see where the money is going in various places, where it's going up, where it's going down, where our expenses are going up, and where we're having less. Those pictures are not as well detailed in an amendment like this as there will be when we get into more budget detail.
And back to jump off of what he was saying about the police department, you have a police millage, but the majority of the police department is subsidized by the general fund. Birmingham does contribute about half of the cost of the police department, but as police department expenses rise, which you're going into negotiations within the year, most likely they will continue to rise. Your subsidy from the general fund will continue to rise.
I remember, I believe you were here, when we were planning for the Headley override and going through a lot of discussion about whether or not we should, how much. There were 2 issues on the table. One was to send to the voters a ballot question to approve a Headley override, which we did. The other issue that we didn't do anything about, or do anything with, was a pretty good business case that you brought to us, which was we need to we need to ask for a tax increase. And do you remember that?
We had a lot of discussion about that because there was conversation about 3.5 versus 5.
That's exactly right. So, my question is, has anything changed? You've just made the statement that you think we're going to be okay with the current revenue levels or whatever they're going to be for 2024-25. And I recall from those earlier discussions that we said we were probably going to be okay for about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Is that still your feeling?
So when we updated that forecast, it was still looking like it was a couple years down the road.
Okay.
Where you were going to run into a major issue. We can revisit that forecast and give you a better idea during this upcoming budget process. to kind of get that conversation
answer
going.
David's
I think we'll
concern.
absolutely have to ask that
Yeah.
question. So the Headley, the change to Headley, I think it was about 346,000 it gave us
Right.
this year, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So 346K is not much considering
Yeah.
all the things we're talking about.
Right.
So
And
we're
that's
gonna
where it's
tap
just
out.
like, you know, I think the earlier we get ahead of that more substantial conversation, the better off we're all gonna be, right? Cause I know that the Headley, you know, it ended up working out, but it felt not last minute, but kind of up against the gun for getting out the commuter edge.
Well, there's two things that apply there, David, and your questions are very, very important to this whole conversation. Headley, this last year, did not have a reduction. And typically, it's been 0.09%
Yeah.
something to that effect, and it was just flat even. I think we have to anticipate that it's going to start making a reduction again, and our revenues will be impacted by that. What they tended to do was to offset some of the inflationary values that we were getting out of home values that minimized what we got in terms of additional revenue. But you, as a council, this next year, need to consider, maybe this is the year to take something out when you're not hurting. But can you make an argument that's convincing when you can't demonstrate that you're currently hurting?
There's been a long conversation about what's going well, not going well, with our budget, and in terms of revenue and expenses, the lines are still going the wrong direction. 346 bought us a little bit of time.
Exactly.
And I can see that 346,000 one-year bonus disappearing pretty fast, frankly, so. I
That's
think you're
only
concerned.
5 years, isn't it? The 346?
Yeah, but it's gonna go down every year.
right.
And our expenses are going up faster than that.
Sure.
That bought us a year.
Sure.
Right.
Huge
I agree.
concern.
And we had a whole list of things, a wish
Like
list
do.
that's not in any
So
budget.
We have
Yeah, exactly.
structural
Right.
issues. in
We have
terms
no-
of how
we have
we're
no
funding
spending
the village.
levels. Yeah.
Right.
We have.
Right. Well, we have
Much less
a
to
lot
do
of work to do
than
here to,
We have lots of work to do. You're
Yep.
right.
All right, let's move on.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had a,
We had a motion on the second.
so, and that was our discussion, any further discussion, I guess is the point we're at. Okay, all in favor of approving the budget amendments? Aye. Okay, that's done. Okay, special reports, I don't have anything as president. Council, any council comments, reports?
I do. First, I'd like to recognize February as Black History Month, and commend all the incredible leadership coming from the black community. I feel that Franklin, is still underserving in leadership from not just that demographic, but multiple. We have a lot of representation within this community, and I would love to see more leadership. So by all means, I encourage anyone who's thinking about leadership within our community to please do so. Happy to have people reach out and have a conversation about how to get involved. And then on a separate note, a couple of items just off of the previous conversations. The first one was with the stormwater system. A couple of the material questions that I would have, or I think we should be mindful of, is when does the grant, what is the exact date the grant expires
Which grant?
for the stormwater?
When do we have
and
to
then-
spend the money
The
before we
ARPA
give it back?
Yeah,
Right.
and then does it have to be committed or does it have to be spent?
Committed.
Committed, okay. Then also with DTE, the notice to the village, how in advance of the power shut off did we get the notice?
Do you count that in negative numbers?
Yeah,
We didn't.
It was a fire.
We got no notice.
no, not the fire. There was the fire that occurred, the power outage happened, at least in my area, a
Simultaneously.
day. No.
Oh, it
Mine was the
occurred,
same
it
time.
occurred that night, and I got notice on they have my cell phone. And I sent from my cell phone, I sent notices out to the council.
Yeah.
There was sometime after midnight.
Yep.
And that was the midnight following the fire,
Right,
okay?
yep,
And by then, what they had been doing was moving the power source from one place to another, and it required them taking power from us in order to do some other things that they needed to do, and I don't have any of those details.
yeah.
But that was the explanation I got, and that's what I tried to convey to you at that time. We got periodic updates. The regional manager for DTE contacted me twice on the following day. And basically, it was just an update and verified what we were doing with the customer service folks and that sort of stuff. So it was good, but not
Yeah.
essential.
Right.
So beyond that, David, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I wonder if it would be beneficial, and if it's even possible, but worth exploring, is that in those circumstances, if they have some type of pre-written template that we could then fire out to the community using like the This Week and Next Village Blast to say, we may experience a power outage or we will experience a power outage so that people can anticipate for it.
Some of our communication systems here were just not
We're down.
effective. Yeah. So our ability to do that was pretty barren.
Okay.
What DTE gets, my understanding is that when you fill out papers for your account, they ask you for your email.
Yeah,
And they sent out a number of pieces
100%.
to folks' emails that were directly from DTE, which was far better than anything we could have done.
Okay.
When you
I
use the
received
app.
an email and text
Yeah.
message.
My
and
husband
I didn't
did.
lose power.
Yeah.
So it was a blanket to any emails in the community, apparently.
I think we got the notification that the power was gonna go off after the power was already off.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's
wasn't
what-
a warning.
right, that's
It
what I'm
wasn't an
saying. I'm
advance
not,
warning. It was a, hey, you lost power.
right, that is, like,
Right.
from a business continuity perspective, you say, the probability of us having to turn off the power or divert the power from Franklin is whatever percent. Is there any type of way that we can have a relationship, or they can take the obligation to say, if we know we're gonna shut off a community's power, give them whatever notice possible, so that it's not,
Right.
we shut off your power, hey, by the way, your power's off.
do
Like,
they
we
ever
know that
It would be
already.
nice to be able to fill up
Do
some
they
water
ever
bottles to
ad-
put in the
Do
toilets,
they ever
like, to
admit
make the
that they're
toilets
shutting
flush.
off the power?
Why wouldn't they?
I mean, I believe they do all the time, but I've never known them to admit that they're doing that.
I don't know why they wouldn't admit that, though. It doesn't create complications.
My understanding is of the night of that fire, that all hell broke loose for DTE.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And they had a whole bunch of decision-making and communication around that decision-making that they had to get to before they were in a position to start sharing stuff with us.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I was surprised that they did it as soon as they did, frankly. So I don't know what there is in the way of an answer, David.
Yeah.
It's worth talking about, but all I can do is share with you what
Yeah,
I
and I
learned.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I think our discussions were, they were willing to share whatever they had, but internally, they didn't know what they were doing yet.
Well,
you
and
know? This was
Yeah, well, this
last
is an
year when.
emergency. This
yeah.
wasn't any kind of typical
Right.
weather-related
Right.
outage, you know.
But the following morning, we had one of their engineers in our front office talking about what was happening.
Yeah.
So that we as staff had some things that we could share with the community that we had learned. But it wasn't that they sent some guy that normally handles a shovel out to tell us about that.
Yeah.
This was somebody who was actually involved in some of the decision-making.
Roger. So
So-
I'm going to go back to what I asked Chief Tony. I think we deserve, as council and as a village, a full write-up of what happened, what, what transpired that night, and what decisions were made, what went wrong, you know? So we're going to have lots of questions like David has, but I would like for next March to have a write-up from them. Here's what happened, here's what we're going to make sure doesn't happen again.
I'll be talking to him again. I'll certainly work
But
on
I'd like
that.
a written report.
Yeah.
And then, just the next thing, not DTE. I believe the road commission is planning on diverting traffic from 12 Mile to 13 Mile. they're shutting down a strip of 12 Mile. It's to route it up Telegraph, down, or across 13 Mile, through Franklin, which seems slightly illogical because you have 1 mile up to 13 Mile compared to a half mile down to Northwestern, and we're gonna have substantial backup, traffic all the way from, Franklin Road to Telegraph.
How did you hear that? I haven't heard.
Somebody sent me a flyer. I don't have my phone on me, but yeah, I'll pull the information and share it with you.
If you've got it, I'd like to see it.
Absolutely.
Okay. David,
Yeah.
anything else for council reports?
So I just, we're talking about money and we're talking about money in the future with this next event. And I just wanted to remind everyone that we had discussed doing new benches maybe, because again, we have about, I think we talked to Johnson and they said there's about 4 to 5 picnic tables on the,
I think it's double that number,
really? I thought he said 4 to 5 and he thought they were about $900 each.
but as my recollection is just different, and I may be wrong. Okay?
Okay, but that's what the email that I read, I said that there were many in good shape, 4 to 5 needed to be replaced, and $900 each, and so I just wanted to bring that up into our thought process, and how long it takes to get those done, and it would be nice to have them,
For summer.
done for summer, especially when we're calling more people in bicentennial.
One of the questions that's related to that is how many of these tables are village-owned versus FCA owned?
They're all village-owned.
Yeah.
All the picnic tables are village-owned that we're talking about, the heavy-duty metal.
They get transported regularly across the road from the green or to the FCA?
They only get
property?
transported across for Roundup, as far as I understand.
People do it all the time.
They're
for their
so
own-
heavy, but
Right,
you're
right,
right.
you're right.
People
But
do
people
it.
do it all the
It's
time.
been going on,
Right.
and it hasn't been an issue for us. We haven't raised it as a concern because we think it's for the benefit of all the community. But if we're going to buy tables, then the question is, if in fact FCA is getting the benefit of a certain number of those tables, is that our burden or should that be shared somehow?
Well, we've put in 3 picnic tables already ourselves, and maybe we're thinking we might do more. But we've already put 3 in of our own on our property, and it's, most of these picnic tables are, I think, on the village green for the most part.
I think most of them are.
Yeah.
Roger, for next meeting, would you confirm how many we need, figure out what it costs, and if you have ideas on funding, lay it out here so we can make a decision? Sure. Okay?
So the other thing, speaking again about funding, is that I just want to, again, bring up the fact that in the past, we have funded other community events like Main Street's Block Party. We've given money to them. And we're planning on, we're maybe, funding and buying an ad with the next printed program that the FCA will be making, is maybe, I'd probably say 75% done with a welcome book that will be given out to every new resident in Franklin and available to every resident. And if we have enough funds, we can mail them out to every resident in Franklin, which is a substantial amount of money. I think the quotes that I've gotten are about $6,000 to have them printed, to have 1,500 printed up. And so that also then would be the cost of mailing them out. We have a quote for $500 for a map to be made just of the village area of the church property, the FCA property, the village green, the library, the police. It's about $500 for the planning commission to make us a nice map for that we could put in this book. And it is something that I think we could probably use in our master plan maybe in the future too. So I don't know that we need to have it in the master plan, but now that we've got all the barriers, we've got the outline of the properties, it would be nice, I think, to put that in the master plan, but I also would like to put it in our welcome book. And I'm looking for some support from the council for the FCA to be able to help provide some funding for this, whether it's an ad in the welcome book, paying for this map. I just want to put it out there that these are more funds that I think that need to be considered. And I'm not asking for it right this second, but I just want people thinking about it.
Okay. Any other council issues or report?
I have one really quick item. And Mike, I don't know if you have any plans on this one, but just going through some unfinished business from council in my office, and back in October, we started talking about an electronic sign or a sign in front of the village. It's not on the agenda. My request is, can we put it on the agenda?
We can certainly put it on the agenda. We've gotten some estimates. And if the council would like to.
Yeah,
Andy,
I
about-
apologize. I meant to add that to our legal this past Monday, and I got, I forgot to put it on there. I think it absolutely should.
Yeah.
We were talking about this last fall.
Yep.
And wanted to
October
have it
3rd, yeah.
up and running this spring, so. you
My
do
belief
have-
is that the council needs to have some serious discussion about such a sign and what it is that you want to accomplish with it.
That is where we left off
Yes.
in the fall, because what Planning Commission did was ask McKenna to do an analysis of a non-electronic sign and the traditional go out there and stick the letters on the sign. We brought it to the council. People hadn't seen the electronics, the one that is, where you can control the text.
Computer control.
Computer controlled. So we asked the office to send those two documents to the council, but it never got on the agenda again. So I don't want to discuss it today, but I would like to discuss it so we can put it to bed one way or the other.
What information, Pam, would you suggest that we have on the sign?
Well, we should have two letters from McKenna.
We have them.
One dated in September and one in October. And I think, Dana, you have those electronically. So I maybe just resend them or.
We're just waiting for Mike to get back in town, and this month's agenda's got a lot of stuff on it, so we just are waiting till next month.
Right.
Roger did give us the write-up from the company that showed us some examples of the changeable signs.
Yeah.
They're, they have some mass to them. They also have some materials that we would probably not be comfortable with, that we would probably have to then expend probably further funds to design around.
Was there anything in that report that talked about turnaround time for either of the two concepts? So do you think we can get to that so that we can get that on the agenda?
The impression I have is that the turnaround time is relatively small. Because one of the companies that we got the information from manufactures them in Farmington Hills.
And he even was willing to come in, and,
Could be.
yeah, I just think.
I just think not tonight, we've got other big
Well, I
stuff. but
wholeheartedly
we could
agree.
just Put it
Yeah.
on the agenda for next
I
time.
really would like to see us move that
We'll put it on the agenda for next
Okay,
month.
Could we
That's it.
get those two write-ups just included in the packet when it's circulated?
Yep.
Yeah, resend.
Thank you.
And with timing.
Okay,
Okay.
any other council thing? Roger, do you have administrative report?
No, sir.
Okay, planning commission, Stuart, you got, what you guys up to?
So, for those that weren't able to make a, the council meeting last month, we did take back the Pickering Barn next steps, with the direction to, make it more of a, Main Street, interaction with planning commission. So if it is something that Main Street's interested in collaborating on for the Pickering Barn, we'll work with them as part of that initiative. We also, finalized our committee for the master plan goals and objectives that we're reviewing based on council's feedback. And then we also continued some discussions based on artificial turf regulations. The council came back to us and asked for some more empirical data with regards to detrimental studies that have been done with regards to having astroturf or artificial turf in the and how it could affect potential rainwater. So we're still waiting on a report back from McKenna on that so we can provide feedback to the council. Also, we did as a commission review the wording for our main objectives that we're planning on focusing on as a commission. The number one priority for us is pathways and walkability within the village. So we want to make sure that, after 200 years, we can still walk around in the village the way that our predecessors did, and possibly improve it, right? The other number 2 objective is getting members of the community involved within the village. How do we as a commission help let our actions be known by villagers, and also how do we get them into our meetings to more than just an open meeting for a particular ordinance that we're reviewing? How do we get them involved in the actions that we're taking? The number 3 action, number 3 goal that we have is to improve our interactions with other commissions within the village, Main Street, historical, other groups that are within the village. How do we communicate better with them? How do we work with them? Because some of the ordinances we propose to council could affect them, and so we want to make sure we have better dialogue with the other organizations within the village. And then our 4th goal, though, is along the lines of our number 1 goal, but it's specifically with regards to 13 Mile and Franklin Road, the safety concerns there, because crossing, and what do you do once you cross south of 13 Mile? And then also, how do you see someone coming around the corner when heading south or on Franklin? There's just some concerns there that we want to propose. So those are our main goals that we want to look at this year as a planning commission. We are looking at proposing what we can do from a cellular ordinance initiative. How do we prepare an ordinance that would cover what we've already discussed previously in the last 6-8 months with regards to the T-Mobile XNet cell service? How do we as a village kind of preemptively have a decision, or how do we, through our ordinances, make that decision easier for someone coming in? And then so those are the main things we're going over right now. A few things.
Stuart, thank you. I was listening carefully to your 5 points, your 5 missions, so I thought that's great. That should keep you busy all year, it sounds like.
It should. So, I received like 3 additional inquiries around the golf court and the possibility of a golf cart ordinance.
Okay.
And so we had previously voted as a council to send it to the planning commission. The planning commission didn't want to take it.
We didn't feel it was consistent with our plan for the village, so
that it is not in line with
how.
Could you elaborate on?
Yeah. So after reviewing it with as a planning commission, we didn't feel comfortable bringing an ordinance that would allow it to the council.
What is the function of the planning commission?
The function of the planning commission?
Yeah.
Part of the function is to provide ordinances that would help determine what we do how we interact or how we live within the village. So whether with regards to public.
But wouldn't a golf cart ordinance fall within that parameter, particularly at the direction of council? Like, we are using the planning commission to help us do the research that we otherwise need support on. And that is why it was initially sent to the planning commission, and then for it to be denied.
So when we did the research, it wasn't all of the organizations or communities that have golf cart ordinances are not consistent with the usage that we use within the village.
What is the difference between us and Milford?
What's the difference between us and Milford? We're a much smaller. We're a much smaller community than Milford is, but they didn't come up as part of our discussion. Milford specifically.
Didn't the police chief say they didn't? Didn't the police? What did the
yes,
police
the police chief also.
Stuart, wasn't there a good deal of pushback from our current chief?
Yes.
And was that a consideration?
Yes.
And
because
so might we ask our deputy chief if he concurs or doesn't?
But I don't want the one. That should dominate the conversation, or
no, I just think it was a factor, right?
This is where I guess I get a little bit frustrated in how this was handled, is that safety is a concern, without question. That is why we sent it to the planning commission, for those considerations to be heavily weighed, to see how you can curb it, for an analysis to be performed to say, if we require seatbelts, if we require X, if we require Z, what does that leave us? Are there true safety concerns?
Yep.
because I don't know that an analysis was done as much as a gut reaction.
No, there was an analysis done.
There was a hearing.
Yes, please, go ahead, David.
Chris wrote a whole ordinance.
Yep.
He wrote a sample ordinance. They reviewed, and again, I watched all this. He drafted a sample ordinance, they reviewed it, they got input from the chief, and the consensus, their consensus was, the chief was against it, we don't recommend the ordinance, so that's why it never came back. But they did do an analysis, the recommendation was, we shouldn't do it.
And I went
But they
to that,
did
I
draft
went
an
to that
ordinance.
meeting.
Yeah, they drafted an ordinance, they reviewed it. I remember watching it on television. There was great critique of it. Chief Robert was fairly adamant against it, and I think it died there. But they did do a review.
So, my 2 cents. So it's easy to be negative against things, but I also live in another community, which we have this, it's just as small as Franklin is. Everyone loves them. It's such, it's a complete non-issue from a safety point of view. It's normal, it's just such a non-event. So if Milford has it, a bigger community, where I live in Brooklyn has it, it's such a non-event. It's easy. There's no safety issues.
I understand what you're saying. When we reviewed it, we didn't feel like it was consistent with the character of the village and the safety considerations that we had,
So do
so.
we want to put it on the agenda for next month, and you provide all the documentation that you put together? And
Yeah, we can
consider it to
forward the
council?
documentation that we
Is that what you want to do?
reviewed.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Because again, I just need to be able to,
So all of that's in our packet too, so we can, from the previous meetings, I can also email you which
Well, or
meeting it
Roger
was,
can-
or Roger can email you
Wherever
the
Roger is.
the
Roger?
material that we reviewed.
yep.
So that would be,
It's a good idea.
Roger, we're talking
Yeah.
about golf carts, and we want to put that on, to get planning commission input and put it on the agenda
well,
next
so
month.
we already reviewed it, so if you could forward the material that McKenna prepared and the ordinance that that was drafted,
Okay.
on golf carts, yeah. As well as the comparison studies that he did with regards to the various communities within Michigan
Yeah.
that use those, yeah, and what regulations, because different communities have different regulations from a street and safety and how they handle it, which, in some cases, can you drive them at night? And if you do, what do you need to have them, and how do you license them, how do you regulate them?
Right.
Things
And
like
look,
that.
the reality is that we refer these things to planning, and that they can come back and give us a recommendation. We don't have to accept
Right.
the recommendation.
Right.
So if we feel strongly that it's an area we want to consider again, we can certainly.
No,
For sure.
I mean, you know that.
Yes.
So,
Okay,
I agree.
so let's,
Yeah.
It's not dead.
I'm sorry?
March,
Yeah,
March meeting?
put it on the March agenda.
David, my experience on this, my real life experience, it builds community. It really does.
Everything that I've read supports that. There are a lot of new studies that are coming out with regard to communities that are going in this direction, and that's exactly what they highlight.
May I ask, you've received many members of the community asking us, is there a demographic very widespread with regards to who's interested in doing this? Is it a single demographic? Is it, how variety are the community members that are interested in doing this?
Fair question. The demographic is wide. It is I would say it's within an area of the community because it's word of mouth, right? Like somebody said, oh, this is of interest. Yeah, I spoke with David about it. He recommended it to the planning commission. Then I get a bunch of people following up that say, where are we at with it?
So are
right?
these people south of 13 Mile, or are they people
South of 13 Mile.
that are trying to get across? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yep.
I mean, this is
Okay.
the village, and there's probably a lot more interest in this in the villages in Florida.
Well, they already have that.
But for a different
Whole different
purpose.
ballgame, yeah. Yep.
Clark Neck, Michigan, we have 800 people. Next week I'll be in St. Pete. We've done this in St. Petersburg. It's such a non-event. So between Clark Lake and Milford and St. Pete, all these communities are doing it from tiny to mid-size to St. Petersburg. It's
We'll
not a
put
big
it on the
deal.
agenda next month.
Okay, so
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do you have anything else, Stuart?
No,
You
that's,
good?
I have. Yep.
Thanks for your good work, sir.
Yep.
Very good.
Thanks, Stuart.
All right, Main Street, is there a Main Street Franklin report? Doesn't look like it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, I think there's some things we could talk about though, Roger, the work plan.
Well, I didn't come prepared to talk about that.
Okay.
And she's had.
I guess we'll talk about it next month.
So we should
You
put it
have
on,
something?
well, I mean, Mike and I are both council liaisons to the Main Street Board. And one of the things that is being, that the Main Street organization is doing is finishing up their work plan. And what's at stake is certification, recertification as a select level community. So the stakes are pretty high. Susan is leading this along with Jeremy Fagan, who's the board chairman, who's also the bank manager at Comerica. And I think it's important for council to be aware that this is happening. They should be able to finish it up in time to meet their deadline of mid-March. But the other thing that will happen is Susan, and probably with Jeremy's support, will come to the council to it's not a permission thing, but it's a support.
Yeah.
And information. So I just want to put that out. I don't know if it's March, we'll leave that up to Susan, but that's a big thing right now.
And there's a lot of great news coming, ownership changes in our retail community, some very big announcements forthcoming. We can't discuss them specifically today, but there's some very good anchor situations that we'll be talking about, I hope by next month.
Yeah,
Okay,
so.
cool. Anything to say on Pathways, the committee?
Yeah, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago at the Krieger House so let me back up real quick. So our current representatives on the Pathway Subcommittee are myself and Mark, 2 representatives from the Planning Commission, given the previous work that the Planning Commission has done, and then 1 from the Zoning Board of Appeals, each representing kind of in weighing in from the perspective of their representation. We also have brought in Oakland County, who does a lot of is just committed to this work to help go through the planning process. And we're very mindful of the work that the Planning Commission has done, and we're leveraging a lot of that, but we're also using this in help from Oakland County to kind of level set and reset with how have other communities been successful in going through the planning process, so that if I were to step out, or if Mark were to step out, or anyone who is currently in the subcommittee, how can we then have it be picked up and continue down its path? So 2 weeks ago, we did a mapping exercise, which was a preliminary, where are the places of interest within your community that probably have a lot of foot traffic, or where people would like to get to? What are dangerous areas within the community, and mapping that? It wasn't where do we want to put a pathway, where do we want to put, interconnected pathway for a community. It was a great exercise that we plan to continue to move forward. I think the next thing that we would be looking to do is meet with residents, not again about the placement of a particular pathway, but just to go through that same exercise with the community to understand where is the community trying to get to, what are experiences of dangerous areas within the community that they've experienced, to gather more data and start to formalize kind of that educated process. So.
Cool.
Okay.
Great.
Sounds like good fundamental stuff.
David,
Cool.
did they give you any workbooks or anything like that for this effort?
They gave us a lot of online resources, and then I have very large plat maps.
Okay, I'd be curious to know more about that.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
Cool.
What do you think your outcome is? I mean, what would be the deliverable on something like the work that you do?
Yeah, so it's a combination of landing on, recommendations for, one is the recommendations of where the pathways would be.
Okay.
I think the Planning Commission has done a really good job there. But marrying it up against what are the sources of funding and having honest conversations around that. That's why I wanted to pull in Oakland County, because their expertise is to know what is the viability, what are timelines, right? If you're looking for external funding, what are the timelines that you're looking at? How reasonable is it to think that you're 6 months out, a year out? The planning process of it. What type of a proposal is of interest to the funding sources? So trying to level set more on the expectation of timing, planning, and the total cost. And then once we have those deliverables, I think we can start to chunk out, okay, we think that if we want to put a pathway that connects this landlocked community into another road, how much do we think we could get from federal funds, or state funds? If we include that with another project, does that increase or decrease our chances to figure out really how to tactically go through it?
Thank you.
Yep.
That helps.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to old business. We have to do this second and final reading on public institutional zoning, where we have 5 properties that have been approved for zoning change, and this is the second reading of that, so.
Can we tie it all together, or do we have to do each individually?
I'm okay with tying it all together. Let's at least have that motion to tie it together, and,
I make a motion that we consider the second and final reading for public institutional zoning for all of the following properties: the Franklin Community Church, the FCA properties, the Huda School, Franklin Cemetery, and the Franklin Sledding.
is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
Any discussion?
So the discussion is that the FCA doesn't want to be included. What do you do with that?
That's the discussion.
That's
This
the
is
discussion.
zoning now, not historic.
This is
district.
zoning, right. Changing the zoning, not
I
including it.
don't think you and I can talk about that.
I don't think we can,
Okay, so.
but I had to bring it up. I mean, I can bring it up.
I have nothing to say.
Right.
So, this is on the public institutional zoning. Have we heard from the community church, because they had a representative here? Have they followed back up? They said, we just want to understand. We tried to explain at a baseline, and then said, by all means, if you still have concerns, come back.
Nothing.
I think we had so many opportunities.
No, I agree. I just want to make sure that,
Right.
My motion is,
Well, notice that
All
this is
five.
the second reading. So, first reading, 2 months ago,
that
went through and was approved as is. So there are no counts since.
So just point, Tony Bull from the Franklin Community Church Board was here January 8th.
Yep.
And then we pushed it. He communicated with me about 2 weeks ago. They're like the FCA, they prefer not to be in the zone. So that's their feedback. I don't know whether they were going to plan to be here tonight, but they did
And-
come a month ago.
Did they in that
The
bylaw?
church.
and the FCA, so,
and there's nobody here from either the church or the FCA to opine further.
Rich is here from the FCA.
Well, I know, but I mean, we sort of beaten this to,
but I just want to understand, is it the FCA's position that they do not want to be part of the public institutional zoning?
So what, is there a
But that's-
rationale?
But that
Yeah, I
is,
don't
that is
understand that.
dramatically different than what Al Becky, who is the chairman or the president of the FCA, said to us in this meeting a few months ago.
I
I'm
believe,
confused.
That is correct, because Al and I both were okay with it,
And-
but the rest of the FCA did not want it, and we had a discussion, and that was the ultimate. The FCA decided that they weren't so happy with it.
Do they
I'd like to understand the logic.
They understand it in depth,
the
they read through it
president
in
said it
depth.
was fine. You say it's fine, and I say it's fine.
But the rest of the FCA was there's a disagreement. And one of the big questions that I brought up right here to Peter when we got here, I wanted to just understand, because one of the big issues was with the FCA property is that we rent our property out, the gazebo out, the property out to non-community people, right? They want to have their own wedding, so they can use our gazebo. One of the things that we read in the public institutional is that, my understanding was that everything has to be done for the community, and that was my question to you. Are we able to rent it out still? And that was my question.
I don't think it has,
Yeah, so
I don't think it's,
I'm asking Peter
Peter,
to explain.
you want to address that?
there's a zoning act that says if the use of the land is lawful at the time of the enactment, then that use may be continued, although the use does not conform to the current zoning ordinance or amendment. So even though,
What's the use that's impermissible in the ordinance? Well, let's back up. Time out. So you have issues with the ordinance, but the current ordinance doesn't permit it in the first instance. So whatever you're theoretically doing that you're trying to protect, The ordinance as it stands now doesn't even allow you to do that. So I'm not sure what could even be grandfathered or what could be protected if what's being done in the first instance isn't even permissible.
We're gonna have to go back to see when the original zoning was implemented or adopted to see if.
But I'm still not understanding, what is the use that's in question?
I was asked, can they still do these weddings? And
I think David's question though is.
So where does
what within
so
current
what in the
ordinance
public
prevents it?
institutional zoning ordinance says you couldn't have a wedding if in theoretically you wanted to do it?
I didn't see anything that said it was prohibited, but just.
Okay.
But just to make sure that if they continued this use, they'd still be able to use it even if you guys adopt it.
When you say continue the use, the use in the first instance isn't permitted. In a residential district, where does it say that on public grounds you can have a wedding? I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand.
That's interesting. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
And
Anything, I mean, it would still be, even if you were gonna have a wedding in your backyard, you
You're not
would
charging for it.
probably still have to have a permit for certain things. I mean, not to have all the people at your house, I don't believe, but if you had a tent, if you had noise issues, but things like that,
The
but
question is, can you rent it out
Is
to
it- so is it-
someone else and make money off of it? That's the question. Because the FCA makes money.
so what's the language in the ordinance that prohibits you from doing that?
Yeah.
If anything, the ordinance says if you have a building, you can use
You can-
49% of the building for retail purposes.
Correct?
We're not even talking about anything within a structure, we're talking about just out in the open. Is there express language in the ordinance that would prohibit it, whereby the current ordinance in your current zoning expressly permits it?
The other question is, does the second reading allow us to have a furtherance of discussion when we've had the first reading and everything was
Sure.
approved in the first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It has to pass both readings.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we call for a vote?
It's just,
I mean,
to me, the issue here is this is residential zone property, and it's not a reflection on the current board. It's in the future, will some guy come up with, or gal come up with hey, let's subdivide it and build 6 houses. This would be an impediment to doing that, which, because of the significance of that property, is a good thing for Franklin.
and I believe the president of the FCA agreed with it.
Absolutely, and I think that, yeah, I
So why
think,
don't we just call for a
Let
vote?
me just say one more
But
thing.
Kathy and I have to
can't
abstain.
vote.
okay.
One more thing. We went down this path because we have all of these properties master planned for a zoning category that doesn't exist. So they're all zoned inconsistent with their future land use
Right.
map. The ordinance was a brand-new ordinance that would, sort of had to come out of thin air in order to be established. Like all ordinances, they're living, breathing objects. If in the course of the operation of the FCA over the near future, we come to find that sections of the ordinance are now prohibiting things that they were doing in the past, that would certainly be something to revisit. When we painstakingly looked at this, we made it so that everything that is in the public institutional zoning that the FCA does, that they currently need a permit to do, is now permissible as a matter of right.
So that's a good thing. This is a good thing. This is in the right direction.
It's a protection.
It's
So
the correct
With
zoning
the
for this.
protection being that it's not zoned residential.
Yeah.
So that if the bylaws were somehow eviscerated and somebody was able to convince the FCA to sell them the land, that there wouldn't, it would be theoretically zoned for that right now.
Right.
You could come back and
So-
Hang on.
build the plat.
I made a motion.
But
If we've concluded our discussion, let's do a vote.
is
you wanna-
anybody from the FCA here, though, that wants to speak to why there is an objection? Because I am generally against restricting people's, granted, I take your point that, David, you would respond with, which is you're increasing their use of their land. But generally prohibiting restrictions without strong rationale. So I'm hearing strong rationale, which is the painstaking intention the planning commission went through for the use to be done consistent with the FCA. So I'd like to understand why the FCA believes that it won't be.
Very fair question, and I think it was written for almost all permissible uses for the current FCA. The one thing in our review of the ordinance, however, is that we do not always serve members of the community, which is the way the ordinance is written. So we have folks using the gazebo. We rent out other things on a pretty regular basis and derive rental income from constituents outside the community. Now, if the intent is to, as David said, to adapt the ordinance to what the FCA is doing today and make those permissible uses, that sounds good. I mean, we don't want to be residential zoned either.
Yeah.
But as Kathy and I think Michael said, at the FCA, we kind of thought we had it reviewed. We reviewed it again. There's still a couple of things we got to go through, but we're definitely open to, making it consistent with permissible uses. That's the one thing that we look at that this ordinance would not permit going forward. And I think you raised good points. Are we even permitted to do it now?
No.
No idea, but we've been doing it. So
Because-
we don't want to stop doing it.
My alternative, just to, again, I want to get this on the record, which is, I support the FCA coming forward and saying, we believe that these use restrictions are problematic and making an adjustment, but if I were to vote no against this, my next demand would be to start enforcing residentially. So, again, if you identify something within the ordinance that you find problematic for the prosperity of the FCA, consistent with it, its uses, by all means, please bring it, and I will be a champion for driving that forward.
Ordinance 1250.02 states that in all single-family residential districts, the following uses are permitted. I'm reading the relevant portion. It says, public parks and public recreations areas operated by governmental, quasi-governmental, and private entities exclusively for the use of and enjoyment of the public.
Public.
But it's not Franklin
say the
residents, it's
residents
public. They could be public in anywhere.
That's the way I would read it.
I think that solves your issue.
Specifically say Franklin.
Right,
Right,
right.
right.
Community
So
can
it's
be-
okay.
Yeah.
Community can be a
That's for
diverse-
residentially zoned.
Correct.
So what does
Please.
public
Gonna
institutionally
be the
zoned
same
say?
thing.
Are you okay?
No, he's got to read the public institutionally zoned,
Institutional zone reads the way the residential does.
then we're okay.
Yeah. Do they read the same?
No, it reads differently. That was the issue.
So if we approve this and change the public institutional zone ordinance to match the residential ordinance, that solves the issue.
Sounds like we should be very close.
Right.
I'm not sure I would support going that way.
Do you understand that there's just it's just instead of it saying the community, it says Franklin's community, I think, versus it saying the public. That's the only wording that needs to be
Community can be a
changed.
very, much more broad than limited.
I think you would want to stay broad.
Right.
Broader.
So, but it is already broad. Community is a big word. It doesn't say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
doesn't restrict it to Franklin
But
only.
that's the residential zoning, not necessarily
I think the language now is perfect.
You haven't heard the public institutional, you heard the residential.
yeah,
Residential
No, but-
allows the FCA to do whatever it wants on the
I
property.
understand. I think the language now is written public institution.
But you're not listening to the wording for the public institution.
Peter, have you
Already
found
read
the
I
Okay.
can read.
the
Well, then-
wording in the public institutional zoning?
All right, so, all right. We've kicked this thing down
Yeah,
the
let's
road.
go, guys. Yeah.
Well, it's either that, or someone just produce the ordinance that's in question, and let's all review the ordinance, and let's see what it is specifically that they're caught up on it. Apparently, they have seen some words that they're not comfortable with, and I'm curious to see what those words are that's got them so upset. But
Does
So we have
the
a-
president hold sway in this case?
He's looking at it right now.
They drafted
You
it.
got something to add?
The intent of the public quasi institutional ordinance update was to enable groups like the FCA and the church to be able to continue to perform acts like they have in the past, which might not have been allowed under the residential ordinance. Now, if being a residential zoned property is actually not limited in the way that we had previously thought, and the public, quasi-public institutional is actually limiting them in that function, then we need to look at that again. But the intent for the update in the zoning was to not create a heartburn,
Right.
but to actually alleviate, it was the Tums that was going to help make sure that they didn't have to make a request every Labor Day to do a roundup. It was to allow them to be able to do these activities throughout the summer without having to come to council every single time to ask for permission to get a permit to then have, something on at the baseball field.
Don't actually get permits for those things. We don't actually get permits for those.
Right, so, but action, like, if there was a permitted required action, remove that restriction, right?
Now, the intention absolutely was good. I think that's the one question is this one line, and if somebody could find that would be the one thing to take.
I don't
Can
even
we just?
understand, I don't even understand
Well,
that, because
here's-
the council has never not approved an FCA
Right.
event.
But we've had activities that were post approved, like after the activity, so this wasn't permitted, it came up, and so now retroactively, they had a permit. I mean,
Right.
or last minute, or you had prevent you from having a special meeting to be able to permit something because a great idea came up, but now we have to wait 30 days for the next council meeting to be able to get, but the activities before that. This would prevent
The whole idea
that.
is to make that's what they do already, let them allow it to continue, take the bureaucracy away with trying to get permits.
That's what we're trying to do, is remove the
Yeah.
bureaucracy,
This
yes.
is a good thing.
The
And for-
intention is,
yeah,
there's
for-
no question the intention is right, and to be honest, we don't need many permits. The only time we ever get a permit is for the roundup, and that's more for the flag, we don't really get permits, and so it's not like such a
All right, we can
hardship
do
for
one of
us
two
to.
things. We
Can we
can-
skip
I can
this?
amend my-
Can we skip this and go on to the next one while you find, you found it?
Yeah, I think so.
You found it.
Ordinance 1259.02 provides that in the PI district, the following uses are permitted. C, public parks and public recreation areas operated by governmental, quasi-governmental, and private entities exclusively for the use and enjoyment of the public. So it mimics what
So
the
it's
residential.
wide open.
Correct. yeah.
Issue's gone.
Is there
Let's
is
vote.
there anything else that it
Okay.
says there?
The issue's gone, so let's vote.
Let's
Okay.
just- Is there anything else that we're missing? Because
Dana, would you take a
Howard,
roll
but I
call
don't
vote
see
on this,
anything that
please?
would be contrary.
okay,
But-
very good.
But, okay.
Okay. Dana,
President Lamont,
I approve the zoning change. Yes.
Trustee Solly,
Yay.
Trustee Salter,
Abstain.
Yeah, yep.
Trustee Hansen,
I support the ordinance.
Trustee Hanky,
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg,
Yes.
Okay,
Trustee Early.
I abstain.
so it's 5 approved.
Mazel tov.
Get that one behind us. Okay, the next one, we need to consider an ordinance modification of the historic district. It seems like we've done this 6 times. What's,
So I checked the minutes. So, 2 things I think need to still be done. So, we did vote on all of the properties except for the FCA.
right,
All of the other properties, we approved adding them to the historic district.
That's correct.
So for those 5 properties, I believe we need to amend the ordinance to now reflect them and probably amend the map
so this
to
is
include
strictly
them.
the ordinance we're dealing
Correct.
with, rather than the,
Then, from a report operational standpoint, we never took action on the FCA property. The FCA property has asked to not be designated historic. I personally agree with them in that. And then that one, the minutes, we never took action on. So we either need to officially take action on, in which case if we approved it, they would then get added in with the other properties. If we said no, then they would not be included in the historic district, and we would proceed with amending the ordinance to include these other 1, 2, 3, 4,
Just 4, I think.
4.
Yeah.
Can you repeat
So
that?
can-
Those properties, I'm sorry.
So the properties that we included were, hold on,
I have them listed. Do you want those?
At the end of the session.
well, yeah, the Franklin Church, the Krieger House property, the property on Franklin Road across the street,
Private property.
the private property, Bill's house,
That's it.
We got the church.
Well, that was it, because we had already approved the Bingham or the Historical Museum. And we eliminated the post office was never suggested. We eliminated the fire station.
At their request.
So it's the August 14th minutes.
So this,
Church, motion carried.
and that's
Krieger
approving
House,
the,
motion carried. 32020 Franklin Road, motion carried. Bill's House, motion carried. And then Community Church, motion carried. Oh, no, I take that back. And then Franklin Church, Franklin Cemetery, Huda School is postponed, and the SCR being held.
So community church is not in
Yep. Then the Franklin Bingham Fire Department, to eliminate, that motion carried.
so we
Franklin
talked,
Historical Museum, motion carried, so that got included. The Bowden Road property, the motion carried. So we approved everything except for the church and the FCA.
Wasn't there a to-do?
Wasn't the
with-
cemetery already in? What?
cemetery's already in the
Yeah.
zone.
Already in?
That was, yeah.
It's already in
I
the.
thought the
historic
church
district.
wanted to be.
That's what I did too. I thought
They
the
did,
church.
they
does
wanted to
want
be
to be.
considered historic.
That's correct.
Is there a note in the minutes that there was, someone was going to call, and I recall it was Roger, not sure, to call the board and reconfirm, because the actual work that was done by the HDC consultant had been done more than a year beforehand, and there'd been some board turnover on the church. Somebody was saying they weren't sure, so we decided to be more cautious and didn't act on the church for that reason. Do you have anything in the minutes on that? Okay. I'll just
So what are we
withdraw the
voting on here,
comment then.
folks? So we're gonna talk about the museum, the church, Krieger, my house, Janine Meldrum's house, that's it?
Well,
I'm gonna pull the minutes up again.
if the Franklin Community Church wasn't approved, then we wouldn't include them.
Maybe
Okay,
we
I
should
think
push
they
this
would.
off to next month.
Well,
Dana, you've got.
Unless
a
we've
computer.
got
I'm going off my phone.
clarity.
Can you pull up the minutes from the August, the August minutes, August 14th minutes?
I don't know the house, but the church thinks they are part of the historic district.
They do.
Yeah, so they're good with the historic district, not good with the public zone. But
okay,
that's what they
That's what I thought.
believe that's happened.
right.
Okay.
And in terms of the Historic District Commission report, it did happen. We just need to amend our ordinance to conform with their report. So what are we doing? We're looking up
Meeting minutes.
what happened in August?
Thought you
So-
almost had it there.
Franklin Community Church, moved by Hanson, seconded by Seltzer to approve amending the historic district ordinance to include Franklin Community Church passed.
Okay, so
32325 Franklin Road, Krieger House, moved by Seltzer, seconded by Ehrlich, passed. 32020 Franklin Road, moved by Seltzer, seconded by Ehrlich, passed.
is that the Meldrum house? Okay.
That's all I have, is
Yep.
3202.
Oh, it's on the other side, okay, that's, okay.
Okay. And then 26475
Scenic,
Bill's
that's
house.
mine.
Yep. Moved by Hanky, seconded by Seltzer, approved with President Lamont abstaining. That's all I have for August 14th minutes.
So it's 5 properties, sounds like. The museum, the church, Krieger House, Lamont
4.
House, Meldrum House.
4. We don't include the FCA properties.
No, we had the, did you have the museum on 13 Mile?
I don't see any reference to 13 miles. I see four properties.
I thought it was.
I can reiterate those properties for you.
So, question, Bill, what are we actually asking for in this line item here today?
How could we make that historical? It's not connected to anything.
It's not contiguous.
It's a non-contiguous.
It was,
But I thought the recommendation was against.
It may have been, I don't recall. I thought it was.
I think originally it was included, but then they decided just to go contiguous.
Right.
So that property.
They took it out? Okay.
Plus the house over on Franklin Road down the way that wanted to be included as well.
That's what I thought.
And
Okay.
they said at a later date, they can be added into.
So there's 4 properties.
Correct.
Okay, are we clear on which 4 we're voting on here? And then in terms of the, who votes on this? I can't vote on my own house.
Correct.
Right, so do we break these up into 4 separate votes?
Sure.
Probably the best thing to, let's do that. Let's get a motion to modify the historic district ordinance to include the Franklin Community Church. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll
Second?
that.
Discussion about the church? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the Krieger House, a motion to.
Motion to approve.
Approve.
Second.
Second, any discussion about Krieger?
I'm gonna vote against, just as I did the initial time, because I don't want to bring government-owned buildings under the jurisdiction of the state's historic.
Do you want to take a roll call vote on this, on the Krieger one, please?
Excuse me. Trustee Ehrlich,
Yes.
trustee Hanky,
Yes.
trustee Sulzer,
Yes.
President Lamont,
Yes.
trustee Hansen,
Yes.
trustee Goldberg.
yes.
Okay.
And then I'm nay.
I
I figured as much.
We just forgot about you, sorry, buddy.
They were noted as such.
Consensus.
Okay,
In the
do we
meeting.
need a motion to
Yep.
include my house in the historic district?
Motion to include,
26475
residence.
Scenic, yep. Second?
I'll second.
Any comments, questions? I'm going to excuse myself from voting, but all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then the Meldrum House across the street here,
motion to approve.
and second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're done.
That's 32020 Franklin Road, is that one?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Right. Okay,
So are we gonna vote on the FCA?
well, doing nothing, we can vote
I
on
think we
them.
have to have some resolution one way or
It
the
says we're not
other.
including them.
Okay, so,
We're not.
Motion to exclude the FCA
Second.
from the historic district.
I have a point of discussion before we go further on that one. So, in the interest of a paper trail and a communications trail, because we typically spend a lot of time backtracking among all of us, I would request, before we take action on the FCA properties, that we get a letter from the board of the FCA officially requesting that they not be included in the historic district, and why. And it should be signed by the appropriate officers. I'm really uncomfortable with different reps saying different things at different
I'm
times.
okay with that.
That, I think,
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll do nothing with the FCA, but put it on next month's.
Well, I think let's do an action. Let's postpone the motion.
Yes, everything we just.
What I would do is direct staff in regards to this motion to do what you just requested with the FCA.
I'm going to make a motion to direct staff to, what? What did I just say? Yeah.
Contact the FCA.
Contact the FCA, request a letter from the FCA board, signed by the appropriate officers, explaining why they do not want to be included in the historic district, despite the, I mean, this has been studied by the commission, so I'd like to know. And then that we take action on that item, on including them with that letter in hand next month,
At the March meeting.
at the March meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right, very good. let's move on to item C, consider the outdoor lighting ordinance. We have a,
I make a motion to consider the outdoor lighting ordinance.
second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
We've discussed
We need
this
some-
before.
Discussed it
What,
so many times.
What's new?
We've never passed it.
Do you want to have Stuart?
Stuart, you want to give us a quickie, what you think we need to do here?
So, Planning Commission had been sent back the lighting ordinance with several comments from trustees Sally Goldberg and Hanson. We reviewed the ordinance based on the wording, some ambiguity that was concerned, there were concerns with. We then updated the ordinance based upon taking that feedback into consideration, and that then resubmitted back to council with any modifications that were based upon that feedback. I believe you have line item from McKenna on that.
So, Stuart, first of all, thank you to the Planning Commission for continuously taking my notes on this. Again, what I said throughout the process is I'll provide my feedback, understanding that I am one person on council. And so I think that you all have done a very fair job through that process of, taking some of my comments, not taking others, which is fully within your right. One of the things that I continuously kind of stated was, I don't want to create unintended consequences
Correct.
of regulating something that we didn't think would fall within scope. So for instance, I think the ones that came to mind previously and still today is, I'll start just kind of going through it rather than grouping them all together, but cafe lights on a residential property. Would those be excluded because they would not fit within ornamental lighting? They're not fully shielded.
They're considered ornamental lighting.
Why?
Oh, they're temporary lights. They're not necessarily permanent lighting.
So any temporary lights
Well,
are,
Ornamental lighting are excluded from the ordinance, and that would be considered ornamental lighting.
It's
Right,
decorative.
what-
It's decorative.
not all decorative lighting is prohibited, or sorry, falls within ornamental.
Correct. Right, so you have oh, hold on, I've got to pull it up.
Luminaire that is used to illuminate streets, driveway entrances, sidewalks, or building entrances that serve as decorative or historical function. So that's a condition upon, the decorative or historical is conditioned the preceding statement.
I'm not sure that I get your point.
That, nothing about that indicates that a cafe light would be ornamental. If it's surrounding your patio, that's not illuminating an entrance to a building, and therefore would not fall under this
Most
definition.
patios are doors and they are entrances, so I don't know why it wouldn't be included. Right?
Because you're speaking to an exception, right? Because the person who has a doorway to their patio would be fine, but a person who doesn't, or they have a fire, my neighbor has a fire pit with cafe lights that is not near their house, that would also be a violation.
I don't
Are
believe
you
that we,
working with the definition of ornamental lighting? Is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
So are you asking that something, that instance or that particular use, it should be included in the ordinance? Or, I'm not sure what you want.
yeah, we felt that the ordinance is broad enough that wouldn't be excluded.
What about temporary low illuminance seasonal lighting, which is what lights are that you hang for theoretically a temporary nature, although a lot of
Those-
times
and that
they
was a-
stay up for a long time.
They sometimes do, and especially in our winters.
Might be when they're trying to catch them.
But there's still temporary seasonal lighting, right? So,
I guess, if a summer's seasonal, right? Like, we just have to think that if summer's seasonal, so is winter.
Sure.
Right?
yeah, I mean, if you want 4th of July lights up, you can do that.
No.
So how?
I mean, if you have a
how do we
permit-
resolve your issue,
It's resolved if it's.
or is it
included.
resolvable?
again, my whole point through this process has been, I think what we're trying to solve for is light trespass. And I know that we can disagree, but that's where this all started. And so I am perfectly fine with the regulation of light trespass. I think that we're going to open ourselves up to unintended consequences. So, I mean, if we want to say that cafe lights are seasonal lights and they're temporary, let's just be mindful of the fact that then we're creating a standard, right, that is then applicable. I don't know. That's one example. Next one would be.
So part of modifying the ordinance for ornamental lighting was to reduce some of the specifics of that ordinance,
correct.
which would then limit the cafe lights you're talking about if we had kept those specifics in, right? So in this case, they are lighting up a patio, which is also a walkway, so it would be potentially detrimental to not have some sort of lighting if you're going to be having a fire pit and on a patio that has a function that would not be safe. So I would imagine that a cafe light would also serve as a safety function.
I agree. But I just don't, I mean.
We can't call out every single specific.
No, I'm
experience.
pointing out very, like, common ones. A cafe light is a very common thing.
Currently it is. Within the last 5 years.
Sure. So, still going through, being mindful, outdoor TVs would be banned, correct?
Why is that lighting?
It's a lighting source.
Outdoor TVs?
Yeah.
Is that-
Televisions, right?
Right,
I've seen
televisions.
some
I mean,
big bright
if it's a blinking light, then that can be distracting to drivers, then yeah, that would be, or
But
cause
in your
glare.
backyard.
Is there light trespass problems with that?
No, that's my point.
It wouldn't be a problem with this.
Regulates more than light trespass.
So,
No.
if I may, the biggest issue I had when this came out last time, and we actually got the meters, right? And the conversation was, I use the meter, this I think it's 2 foot candles was the number?
That's a
Point-
Point
0.2
two,
foot, yeah,
yeah.
very low number. Now, because we don't know what 0.2 foot,
Right.
0.2 foot candles are until you walk around and check it. As I walk around the neighborhoods, right, and I think you were
I've done
staying
that
there.
before, yeah.
And the conversation turns to defining glare versus light. So I'd walk around by these houses with their very, very nice brand new lights on their house, and you like, this must be a situation that this is not acceptable. Like, my goodness, there's 4 houses in a row here, this is awful. Didn't register a blip in the light meter. So the light trespass problem still exists because we can't figure out how to, control this glare. I don't think we're getting what we want to do. So, I can walk each one through past those houses now. You'll see like, this is excessive. This is clearly not the kind of thing we're trying to have here on the street. Walking down the street, house in the lights are still strong enough to bother you, but not exceed these numbers. So I just don't think we have it.
Right,
I don't
and
think we're accomplishing
again, the reason that I'm bringing up, I completely agree with you that I am interested in, I don't want to, it goes back to my point earlier, I don't want to regulate somebody's use of their property unless it infringes on another person's use of their property. Cafe lights in somebody's backyard doesn't. Like, somebody who currently wants to put a TV mounted in their backyard facing their hot tub is a light source, and they cannot do
It's
it.
not gonna light trespass. And
That's my
but it's not a
point.
light bulb.
That's my point. No, hang
It's
on,
not a
Kathy.
light bulb,
Kathy,
though.
we're not regulating light bulbs, we're regulating light sources. It's within this ordinance. And the fact that it's not going to cause light trespass is exactly my issue. We're preventing something that does not solve that is not part of the problem we're solving.
It's used for, its intended purpose is to illuminate.
What are you proposing, David?
The television is meant to illuminate, I mean, some people walk around at night with the TV on, but.
Because I think it's overbroad.
I don't see how a TV would be blocked by this at all. I don't see how cafe lights are blocked by this. I think that, like you said, is that you walk around and people can do what they want with their lights. This isn't gonna stop them from having the lights that they have right now. There's a very few people that this is gonna affect. And I think that it makes sense to me that you stop these the more serious lighting issues, and I think that's what this does.
Are you,
So
I don't
David,
think
you
it-
think
I don't
it's
think it
too
does, Kathy.
restrictive? Is
The
what
more
you're saying
serious, I
it's too
think it
restrictive?
does.
Yes, I think it is
I don't think
overly
this
broad.
does.
Where does
because
this-
when I walked around.
You think it's not restrictive enough?
When I walked around with the light meter, saying, oh, would this be in excess of the ordinance? It was not. It would not have stopped those people with those lights in their houses. It doesn't do it.
So,
That's why I don't support
the
it.
current ordinance is, basically you cannot cast a shadow, right, onto your neighbor or adjacent property, right? And there with no empirical way of measuring that,
I
right?
agree.
So, and unfortunately, glare, we can't empirically measure either, unfortunately. But you saw it when you walked around that there's a chance for glare, right? And it also depends on weather conditions, whether or not there's glare as well. Foggy conditions can create different lighting structures and situations as well. So that's a little bit more difficult. But the ordinance is on outdoor lighting. I mean, if someone is using their television to light the
It's not-
outdoors, then that is not, I mean, that's not the intended use of a television either.
But lighting, you're creating a qualifier that doesn't exist within this ordinance. Nothing in this ordinance qualifies, so let's just take a step back. 147005. The
Okay.
requirements of this section apply to all lighting throughout the village. There's no definition of lighting. So therefore, it applies to any light source, right? Because I think within fully shielded, it talks specifically about not being able to see the light source. It's not unique to a bulb.
So can I ask a question? Is this basically a nuisance ordinance? And have we had any expression from within the community about these kinds of nuisances that we are
Yes and yes.
anticipating?
Yes.
Yes.
But this originated because this came to our attention because of neighbors that did not agree with how lighting should be illuminated in their property and how it would affect their adjacent property. And so it was reported to code enforcement, and then code enforcement contended with the fact that this isn't an empirical method to be able to actually determine whether or not the light trespass is there.
And then my point on this is, that was the initial purpose. I support figuring that out. I think this goes beyond that, and we're going to be regulating other things on people's properties. Mark's point is, he's not even sure whether or not this resolves the initial issue that we were going at. So the outcome between Mark and I's perspective on this is, we limit people's use of their property, but we don't solve the problem.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
I think that the origins of this lighting ordinance lie in a different place. I think something happened with your lighting that brought it to it happened. When we did the streetscape, we hired a lighting consultant to help us with lighting in the downtown, something we had never had in the village before. Well, we have, but we were all, that was in the 40s. The lighting consultant, Robert White, struggled a little bit helping us with how much light should come from those poles and how much light can be thrown to illuminate the sidewalk to enable safe passage. That all happened in 2020. We have been farting around with this for almost 3 years. I don't know when your incident happened, but it was not the prompt for a new lighting ordinance. I assure you, Robert gave us a lighting ordinance that was very thick and we thought was overdone. Your planning commission thought it was too much. It didn't suit Franklin's needs, and you embarked on updating.
You're talking about the night sky.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
dark skies. That was part of the initial. That was after we had been prompted by council because of it had been requested by council after that situation.
Well, and Dark Skies was an imposition we made, we meaning the design team that included Bill and me and Fred Galosh and a couple of other people that are not here anymore, about the qualities we wanted in the pole lights that were imposed by what we felt was important. We were not backed up by an ordinance.
But I don't think that was, that was not part of, my understanding, that was not related to why the ordinance came to the planning commission.
I assure you, because I was there, that we needed an ordinance.
Right.
Right, but whether, when it came to council, yeah.
But there were two prompts.
Right,
That
right.
was one.
Right.
The incident with the neighbors
Right.
was another one. But the incident with the neighbors did not drive this ordinance.
Right.
But dark sky, the challenge with the dark sky, presentation was that it limited number of lumens per square foot per property, which would have then required a survey.
Right.
And then how do we translate to villagers to be able to do that?
You rightly
more than we
disposed of it.
wanted.
There was no argument with that at all. But we were now in the midst of rewriting a village ordinance, and the attention shifted to light trespass. But that does not mean that the original reasons, or at least the streetscape driven reasons, no longer existed.
Right.
They did. So I just want to throw that in there
Okay.
so that we ascribe history to history.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think your issue gets resolved with this color correction, section E, where we want to lean toward warm whites, not daylights in the number of.
But the lights that are
colors.
out there, that are existing out there, this ordinance does not stop it.
Well, we're not gonna go back and tell everybody to change their light bulbs. This is from now
Yeah.
forward.
This is,
New construction, right.
Yeah,
so.
because I think there's some validity in the
Of our lot,
in the
99%
color.
of our lots are already built, so.
Well, when the
Well,
light bulb burns out, you replace it with something that's a cooler color.
And most of the, and 90% of those lots probably are in conformance already with the existing ordinance.
Right. So to me, the color correction is as important as the number of lumens.
It's your best attempt to regulate glare.
Right, right.
I agree with that.
Right. So maybe we do, you don't like that?
That is, it's inconceivable to me that we're gonna be going around checking warm lights versus cool.
You're not going to, but if somebody complains, it's only going to be complaints.
All of our ordinances are complaint driven anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I appreciate
Right.
that.
right.
All right.
So where are we on this? Nowhere, eh? What do we do?
Motion to approve that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am one person on council, and I respect the opinions of others. Again, I just want it on the record that my concerns are around the types of things that we are potentially limiting, which would be, again, previously identified cafe lights, outdoor TVs. I think I can get into the analysis whether or not somebody wants to hear it, but a lot of motion detective lights under the fully shielded light definition, you can still see the lighting source. And so I think that that is still problematic. Driveway lights that are built into the driveways and that project up. I suppose you could make an argument that that would fall into ornamental. And then I guess the other question is the application to government. If we were to do an electronic sign, how would that impact our decisioning? So for those are my main drivers.
Okay.
So the question is this too broad, too restrictive, not restrictive enough, and should we?
And not effective enough.
And not effective enough, should we pass on this until we get it to where we all want it, or should we vote on it as it is?
So,
Again, I think the planning commission is saying we got it where we want it.
yeah, so, well, I mean, it's come back to us several times with feedback, and then we as a planning commission, so this isn't just my opinion.
Okay.
But we've gone through as a planning commission, and we feel this is, we're comfortable enough to send it
So
to
your
you.
recommendation is that we approve it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I have one concern where it says light trespass property line that abuts a residentially zoned property. I don't like the word abuts. I think that's too restrictive. It's nearer
We
or
talked
something like
about
that. This is on page 4.
We talked about
B.
a bus,
talked about
right?
that.
So,
Right.
so
But it's still-
at this point, though, we've made the recommendation, and if council wants to change wording,
Right.
feel free. We will not be offended.
I just want to clarify, that is why I started with,
We talked
I started
about
this
the
off with,
Yeah,
I
and it's still
appreciate the
there.
planning
Right.
commission.
Right.
Like,
Right.
any of my representations is not to belittle the work that you all have
Right.
done. I am one representative on council.
Right.
And if you want to make carve-outs or have proposed wording that your fellow
But tell me when we
Counselors
discussed
wanted-
the word abuts, when we said abuts doesn't have to mean the side, but it could mean in front and behind.
any property, abutment
Across
means
the
it's,
street.
Well, that's across the street.
no,
then.
because,
Across the street wouldn't count.
Correct.
It wouldn't
Would
count?
not.
I thought
no, but
public-
you abut up, but the road is a public public. It is not your property. The road is not your property.
Not across the street.
So you would be abutting to the road.
Yes.
So when we discussed it, that was what I thought, because that was my argument, was I didn't like the word abuts, because you need to know across the street, and.
No, I mean, you've already left your property. If you're lighting the
Change the word
road,
abuts.
then you've already passed the abutment of your
But this
property.
is abuts a residentially zoned property. A road isn't a residentially zoned property.
Which page is that? Page 4.
Page 4. If it said, that just doesn't cross the property line where the light is, I could live with that.
That's right. I agree with that.
What is council's pleasure? Do we want to modify this or accept it?
Well, I think the word abuts has to change, because that's important, because because the whole argument was across the street, and here we're dealing with something, the light trespass cannot cross the property line.
So maybe in the interest of being supportive of the planning commission, that we make the changes like right now that
Yes.
we want to make, if there are any?
This is getting
So remove the word about.
How would you?
Well, you want to define it still, right? You don't want to just remove a but, you want to define the replacement word for a but.
Right.
So if, whatever you're using to, I mean, you can't just remove a but, right? You have to at least define what the border is you're talking about, you're worrying about. So,
I could live with a property line near a residentially zoned property.
The intensity, let's read what it says. The intensity of light on a site shall not exceed 2/10 of a foot candle at any property line that abuts a residentially zoned property.
Or if just any property line, period.
oh, well, no, hold on. I think you're missing the rest of the sentence, because the rest of the sentence is also talking about with regards to downtown zone, like.
Exactly.
So we're separating the trespass that can occur to a residential versus what can happen to a.
So,
Thank you.
from a interpretation standpoint, the material thing here is that it is what is the measurement of the foot candle at the property line.
Right.
The abutting is qualifying at what degree you're measuring it against. If it abuts against a residentially zoned property, then it's at 0.2. If it abuts to a commercial, it's at 0.5.
But
Yes,
what
thank
if it
you.
abuts to a street, which is not a residentially zoned property?
Well, the street has to be zoned
You're
still.
still, hang on, it's not, again, a property, I suppose you could then make an argument that something could abut both a residential and a
I mean,
commercial
if the
property.
street is the zoning district demarcation, then yeah, but
Exactly.
Right.
Why can't you just say and these words aren't exactly correct, but can't leave the property line where the fixture is located?
The intent is that if you're a residentially zoned property, you should not light trespass more than 0.2.
Exactly. Now,
But if you're a commercially zoned property or other zoned property, then it's 0.5. But that's if who you are, and that's your property
sentences in
line.
here, right.
Yeah, so I think you can add residentially zoned property right between any property line. So if it says at any residentially zoned property line, that means.
Period.
Correct. And then follow up with the rest of the sentence.
And then the next sentence talks about the commercial other zone. I can live with that.
It meets the intent. So, good.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then we would say, in the second sentence, it shall not exceed 5/10 of a foot candle on any other zone, at the property line of any other zone property. So then that addresses the other than residential. So that becomes two different sentences. I can live with that. So is that sufficient to vote on this, or we still have too many concerns and we want to,
I'm fine with it.
it doesn't deepen my understanding of this and add value, but I'm not gonna fight with you about it. I don't think the road is gonna care, really. It's a moot point for me, so that's,
Okay.
I'm ready to
Okay.
keep moving.
Are we ready to vote? This will be our vote on this and
Be done with it.
our first reading.
With the president's amendment.
I'm sorry?
With the president's, with your amendment,
With
proposed amendment.
that amendment. So we had a motion and a second. We need an amended motion to include the changes to section 1470.05B. Do we have an amended motion?
Who made the motion?
Who made the motion? Do you remember, Dana? That was it. Mike, you did?
Nobody did.
Did I make the motion?
That's it?
So I motion to,
To approve the lighting ordinance
to approve
amended.
the outdoor lighting ordinance to include the,
Amended wording.
the.
Amendments to
the
1470.05B.
amendment Of
70.05B.
70.05B.
Is there a
And I
second?
will second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hopefully not.
Yes.
So what are we voting on?
This is the first
Schedule?
reading
No,
of,
this isn't
So,
the first reading.
I do have further
Not with the
conversation.
ordinance, this is, the agenda says to consider the ordinance. So this, to me,
It's
that
not a
means
first
further discussion. It's not a first reading of a zoning change.
Oh, okay.
so we don't have it posted right. Okay, so
So,
a
the-
vote is moot
The,
then.
the question is, are we gonna vote to send it? That would be more of what we're considering, is we're gonna consider whether or not to schedule the first reading of the ordinance.
Okay,
So Bill, you asked, is there any other comments? So while this conversation is going on, I'm looking up this color correction, because I bought lots of outdoor lights. And like, I don't recall seeing color corrected temperature on all of them, so. And I could not find a single thing on the Costco website that they show what the color corrected temperatures are. That's our saving grace. So I don't think we have what we have here. So, I don't think it's accomplishing what we want. I
okay,
think it's a lot of language we're not accomplishing.
so we're not,
Because you can't find it on a Costco website what the
Well,
lighting is?
if the saving grace is that one line about the color correction, like, it must be this or that.
Where are you reading, Mark?
It's section
he's on,
E.
But you're
Only
saying,
fixtures with this
Oh,
color range are
but
acceptable.
how do you're telling them you,
but there's gotta be a way to
if you
measure
look at the
color.
box anyways, it probably says it on the box, you just don't remember reading it. You can't say that it's
Every
not-
LED bulb pretty much comes with a box that says what the color is.
Yeah, any hue of light is gonna be excluded. Some, like there's one hue of yellow that's still excluded at that temperature. Because you can readily look up.
But yeah,
a
well,
meter.
So we
I
have,
think it's over.
less than 3,000 Kelvin, which means you can do 2,700, which is one of the other yellows
Yeah.
that you can have still.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
still-
yeah, yeah.
so we're gonna carry this over to next month. So,
Why don't we just approve it for, like, to
Because
go
it's
to
not-
first read?
because it's not posted to say first reading.
No, let's set it up for first read it next.
Well,
Well,
That's what
we'll
we're
reason
post
you-
it that way, whether we vote or not. We'll, next month.
Oh,
we'll
it
try-
has to get posted anyways?
There's no
Right.
reason you can't have first reading because you're going to consider it again at another meeting.
Well,
And
David's
it's
point is
posted here
it's not
that you're going
posted
to
that
Village
way.
consider the
attorney, I don't know whether you can consider something a first reading if you haven't posted it as such.
Let's just post it next month as a first reading with the changes that we've made and
Yeah.
planning, if you guys have anything that develops.
I'll be
from
here,
then let's
so
talk.
if you have any questions.
So,
So,
no need to vote.
One thing, Sue, I appreciate your positive attitude.
Thank you, Stuart.
And patience.
Okay. Okay, let's just move on here. We have Pledge of Allegiance.
I make a motion to consider the reading of the Pledge of Allegiance before our monthly meeting for those on council who wish to do so.
Second.
Didn't this come up a few months ago? and was
Yeah.
voted
Did-
down?
Yes. And I can speak, if we have motion second, once it's open for discussion, I'll talk.
It's open.
All right, perfect. So in the last vote, I said there were some things that I wanted to look up, to feel more comfortable with it. Again, just for context for everyone, the Pledge of Allegiance has been challenged multiple times in multiple courts under the First Amendment and has been successful. It is currently read in schools within Michigan. I don't know all, but my children's public schools. It's done at most municipalities. It's done at the federal level. And the route to the previous discussion was around the use of God. The reason that the history behind that is that it was included as a result of the Cold War to celebrate democracy in the sense that you can celebrate religion, you can practice religion, not to exclude or prohibit somebody or try and shun somebody who doesn't. So that was the very specific intent for which it existed. Additionally, within my research, the Michigan Municipal League strongly favors municipalities adopting the reading of Pledge Allegiance to set the tone for the meetings. For one, a reminder that our role, first and foremost, is public servants, and to increase collegiality amongst us sitting up here, reminding, again, that if we serve the people and not ourselves, we're better off working together and collaborating for a solution rather than bickering back and forth. So for those reasons, I got the answers that I was looking for and had asked that this be brought back as I was the deciding vote last time. So, thank you.
And I would just reiterate that I think it's respectful and that it is done according to many, many others in most every other meeting, monthly meeting for councils in other communities. And so that's why I brought it back. So, thank you, David.
I guess if I felt that it added to made some improvement in the functionality of this council, I'd support it, but I just don't see that, so.
So would the decision based upon, that the body here makes also apply to commissions, or can we decide that independently?
That's independent.
I think
This
that's
is strictly the
Right.
council.
Right. Any other discussion? I do a roll call vote on this one, please.
And the motion is to?
Read the Pledge of Allegiance before council.
All right.
And again, it's, as Mike stated initially, not mandatory
No.
participation.
Well, who reads the pledge?
We read it together, and whoever wants to participate may.
Don't participate.
If you don't care to stand for the flag, you don't have to.
Well, we're talking about reading, we're not talking about standing.
Standing and reciting the
motion.
pledge is
To
typically.
face the flag too?
All right, restating the motion is that we recite the Pledge of Allegiance before every meeting for anybody who wants to participate.
Every council meeting.
Every village
For
council.
every village council member that wants to participate.
In the second?
I'll second.
Okay. No, any further discussion? No? Dana, would you take a roll call, please?
Trustee Goldberg,
Yes.
trustee Ehrlich,
No.
trustee Hansen,
Yes.
trustee Hanky,
No.
president Lamont,
No.
trustee Solly,
Yes.
trustee Sulzer.
Yes.
Okay, passes 4-3. Okay, next contribution. We have a proposed resolution here that,
I make a motion to consider the next contribution and purchase of an advertisement in the next Big Night Out fundraiser printed program.
I'll second.
any discussion? Total expenditure is $550.
There was one thing, sorry, give me one second.
So
Okay.
as I brought up earlier tonight, I just want to, we had discussed that perhaps we want to talk about how we're going to fund community groups, if we were going to be deciding on some way to, what we're going to do with our money with regarding supporting the community groups. So this
Well,
is
this is specific to next.
Right.
It is, but I'm not supporting this. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I hope that there will be money available for other things, for other community groups too, and that it was not just,
Yeah,
that's all.
so my conversation would be, that of the 550, 200 of it is going to the design, which to me, as I look towards great cause, but only 350 of it's going directly to the cause, right? Of having that support The other 200 is going to the design. Do we not have something that we could put forward that would be representative of Franklin that's already developed and wouldn't cost additional funds? And if the answer to that is no, my recommendation, I think getting to Kathy's point is, can we make something neutral enough that it can be reused and we're not doing this every single time?
I'd like to offer a correction that I missed. It's $350 total, not $200. Just eliminate that. The cost of the ad, this is for a black and white, full-page ad that's going to go into a program, like a program booklet that is getting passed out at a fundraiser in April.
Yep.
We're going to split this with, the cost of the ad is $500. I found somebody to do the ad layout for $200. So we're going to split this with Bingham Farms. So that's $350 for us and $350 for Bingham Farms.
Great.
So that $350, $100 is our contribution to the design and $250 to.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So we need to change this.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the mistake. I was fixing this at the last minute. It's a one-time thing. I will tell you that the intention here is to start putting Franklin's name as a benefactor and a participant in Next.
Yeah.
And doing so at a very reasonable cost at their fundraiser.
This is the easiest one all night.
Well, I just want to say it.
Okay.
I do not, my editorial is I don't consider there any quid pro quos. This is a one-time only. It's good, Roger and I talked today, it will come out of the council budget, which line item currently has a balance of $2,500 in it, so it's going to be a $350 hit against, it's a council discretionary fund. It's not a line item in the,
And the creative can be designed to be generic, so that it can be used
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah.
That's basically the Village of Franklin.
Basically, it's
Okay.
Franklin and Bingham Farms.
In Bingham Farms,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you,
All in
Pam.
favor?
Mr. David has some words of wisdom here.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Not Senior.
You mentioned the fact that you want to be a proponent and supporter of Next, and I read, how Birmingham has authorized a millage to support Next.
Yes.
And the commentary in the paper was that every community supporting Next was going to be asked to also do a millage of some sort. And I'm interested to see where this village feels on that, because if you feel one way or the other, you should be advising Next of that now before they start putting pressure on you to go one way or the other.
No, I think
Yeah,
that's
but-
actually,
Premature to talk about that, honestly.
Yeah, we haven't had that discussion.
That's
yet.
why I'm bringing it up, because,
But it's coming.
it's coming,
It's coming, you're
so,
right.
I mean, we may want to be proactive in that regards, and
Right.
if we're not supportive, let's tell them that now, and,
We don't know if we're supportive or not.
well, it's going to come up.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize $350 expense to buy an ad for Next. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thought you were going to vote no.
All in favor?
So it's
Okay.
his decision.
He wants to be
what are
able,
you being so agreeable about?
What's wrong here? We should have done the Pledge of Allegiance. Next is American Legal Publishing is going to go through, or there's a proposal for them to go through our ordinances and clarify changes that need to be made and conflicts and stuff like that. It's a $3,500 cost, I believe. We have a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve and legal review of Franklin Charter and ordinances.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, lots.
I'll ask so first question is, where did this come from? Who asked for this?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not needed, but actually the same question you just asked, like, where did this come from? And will they be working with McKenna? And on the known conflicts that we have already been gradually trying to address. As a planning commission, we've been trying to do this as well, so,
So this didn't come from planning?
no.
Has it ever been done before?
Well, who can ask the
Many
question?
years ago.
Let me
Where
let
did
me
it come
chime
from?
in. About a
This
year
is-
ago,
This is an issue that our ordinances conflict with state laws, and we're always looking at something thinking we're right and we're not because of, so I would like our ordinances at least to reference, hey, the state law says something different. So that's what this, one of the things this would
It
do.
came from you.
I'm sorry?
It came from, you're the originator of this?
I've certainly supported this. I've talked about this for several years. I don't know who actually,
yeah, if I can give some background. It was about a year ago where Bill had this discussion with Roger and I, and we looked into it. I got a quote, it was the same quote that we have today that's presented to you, and it was basically left alone. And then I think a question arose as far as our charter and whether chapter, I was just looking at it, section 3 of chapter, bear with me, chapter 3, section 3 states that, you know, to become a trustee, you need to be an owner of real property in the village of Franklin. Well, that since has been declared that that's not valid. You can be a renter of property. So there are various charter provisions and ordinances, such as our telecommunications, that's very dated, most likely invalid. So I think there was a question raised, and Roger said, can you dust off that project that M Legal was going to endeavor? So I went back to M Legal, I said, can you give us an updated quote? And it was basically the same quote as we did, I think about a year and a half ago. So that's what prompted it. You know, with that, I'd like to include planning and McKenna. Included in this proposal is that they'll have Zoom meetings with us and propose new model ordinances.
I appreciate, thank you, Peter, so now we know where it came from. So here's, I looked at this proposal, and first I was shocked to see, and then lawyers don't do anything for $3.5 grand. So like, we opened this massive, on-site, it's gonna be $1,500 a day, but how are they gonna do this entire review of all of our ordinances in, you know, conformance with the state law or whatever else for $3.5 grand?
And Zoom meetings, don't forget.
Well, Zoom meetings are free, in person is $1,500 a day.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, is like, that was kind of I'm interested in the amount of hours that it includes, just because,
I
again.
just don't know how you can look at all of our ordinance and reconcile it for $3.5 grand. I think we're gonna have a $50K bill by the time we're done with this stuff. It's gonna go
we're
on for
improving
years.
$3,500. If it ain't get done, then get done, but they're saying they can do it.
If it was not a law firm, admittedly, we would not be able to do it for $3,500, but Sam Legal, I'm sure they have their AI that they plug in and have paralegals and other support staff. We've done it with other clients as well.
What was the success with other clients?
We had numerous meetings and follow-ups, but I didn't handle it. Mary, my partner, just handled it with Lake Orion, and I believe it was a success. I can report
What
that.
will the tax bill from our legal counsel be for this?
Gosh, it probably double.
Double.
So.
Plus
I mean,
McKenna's
is this a
bill.
reputable company that we know anything
Yeah,
about?
it handles our ordinance, publishes our ordinance.
Yeah, they already publish our,
Okay.
So what is the output? Is the output a bunch of recommendations that we should then tackle, or is the output like a rewording of our ordinances that stand and make a recommendation to what council needs to approve to put us in line? Is it just a recommendation, or are they actually rewriting ordinances?
They don't have authority to act legislatively.
No, but
are they gonna give us a
Proposed
list
model
of?
ordinances.
they propose model ordinances, okay. And then do they also take into account recent litigation that invalidates different aspects of other ordinances that, like, for
Yes.
example, tree ordinance, right? So they're taking into account, like Canton just had that issue with the tree ordinance being completely invalidated, and we have to.
That is my understanding. That's
Okay.
pretty current.
And so once they make their recommendations, if we agree, we just plug them in? Or does-
No.
This is gonna be a whole giant
We
can of
change our
worms.
ordinance.
We would look at it.
Just like this new outdoor lighting ordinance, we
Right.
guys would have to vote on it and move forward.
So this could
It says-
cost
it says-
significant.
It says they're gonna give us a report with a draft of code changes that we can either approve or not approve.
But we'd have to
But there's
run
no
them
such
by
thing as-
planning, and we'd have to run them by.
Well, we have to
Our
go
That's-
through a process.
That's the
We have to-
process.
then
we
we
go
have
Yes,
through.
that's
That's a
standard.
normal process of changing an ordinance, yeah.
And we
Okay.
order them in order of priority,
Yeah,
and we don't do what we don't want to do.
Right.
Yes, and I think I think it'd be a role for planning commission is, for example, to take the recommendation from the report and then say, these are ones that we have no choice, but we need to update because our charter is not in line with the
Right.
current charter.
Right.
And then give that, propose those to you as a change, and then we could then modify whatever need to modify
Stuart,
within the
I
bounds.
hope that that's all this is things that we.
We know that there are issues, right? That's what we've been cleaning up for the last,
Right.
well, I mean,
So-
several of you have been on planning, so you've been cleaning it up for a while too.
Stuart, I'm perfectly comfortable having the planning commission go through them and, without involving.
Isn't that gonna cost more to hire McKenna to do it?
Yeah, I think it'll cost more to have McKenna help us do that.
Yeah.
These guys are experts in the field.
Well,
Let's let 'em-
so my guess is you're right, they're running it through AI because they own the database, because if they're publishing it, they have all
You
the
bet.
ordinances, so it's educating on their model off of
Whole bunch
every
of
like
stuff
ordinance out
electronic.
there.
So-
Right.
It's gonna be
Okay.
a 5-year project.
So, did we
Sounds like a
have
new goal.
No, that was not on your 5. It was not on your 5. I know. because
So we have a
listen-
motion and a second to approve a contract with American Legal to review our ordinances and give us suggestions for changes. Cost of $3,500. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, but
Opposed.
Do we have, do
the
we need a roll
contract has
call
a-
here?
The contract has a litany of additional services. Right now, we're just authorizing the initial $3,500 review.
Right.
There are other ongoing services that, in my review, seem also to be very practical. What I'm curious of, Roger, can you, for our next meeting, based on 2022, what do we spend a year on legal? What do we spend a year on planning? What do we spend a year on engineering services? And what do we spend a year on accounting services? I will guarantee you those 4 items, legal's at the bottom. And for us to spend a couple $1,000s to have all of our ordinances brought in touch with state and federal law, have ongoing abilities to have model ordinances sent to us. We send Chris out to do model ordinances all the time. And what we focus Chris on is what are our sister communities doing? Chris isn't gonna spend and doesn't have a database of the United States. This service can plug in other communities that have 2,000 people, so there are services here that it seems that even if you added in all their extras, it could be all in $3,500 on a one-time purchase. And then maybe on an ongoing basis, $500, $600, $700, $1,000 a year to know that our ordinances are always being scrubbed clean.
Yep.
Okay.
It
Is this
seems
only
like,
doing it? Why?
like
why would we
Pete
pick
said,
this company
to have to
versus
hire a
anybody else?
private, well, again, they have probably young lawyers that are out of law school. They probably have a lot of computers doing this. It's not like Pete's firm would be to literally have someone sit down with Lexis and start cross-referencing every law we have. It would be,
Very manual.
respectfully, it would be 10 times this.
Probably, well, it would be more than double. I
Right.
misquoted, so I'm glad you guys are
You're being
going with
nice.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're fine.
So
approve.
we already voted, we approved.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
Okay,
think
let's
this
move
wastes
on.
money.
Okay,
And we don't have
next.
to approve anything they recommend. We could just say, no,
Right.
we don't agree.
It's not for us. So there's a proposal in here from MERS to change our investment plan. I don't know, Roger, can you explain this a little bit? When I just read through it, it kind of looks like they're doing their own investment advisory service rather than relying on outsiders. Am I reading it right?
Susan brought this to my attention.
Okay.
And I frankly have not even read it.
And we're tied into MERS, it's unlikely that we would ever go anywhere else for the police pension.
I don't have any difficulty recommending this to you. And the idea here is for us to do a better job of keeping up to date on where our investment portfolio is. And that we have, but mostly that's it.
So there, we have a page that shows plan asset weighted plan averages, Mission Square versus MERS, and then the difference.
It's the first page. Yeah.
Yeah, what is that, performance measuring? Like, are we saying that we're going to receive a financial benefit by moving over to MERS from a performance standpoint?
Thank you for pointing that out. We've been talking about the fact that there are several of us in the organization who have their retirement strategies tied to either MERS or in what we've been. This would help us adopt an alternative to the plan that we've been using that we don't like. And we had a presentation by the folks from MERS explaining what it is that they do in terms of the options that are available to us as investors in their program. You guys have to authorize our ability to participate in this and get rid of Mission Square, which has been a royal pain. So.
All right, sounds good.
So this requires a 3-page resolution approval as well as a participating agreement approval. So.
Motion to approve. Second.
Second. Any further discussion on approving the agreement as well as the resolution? Yes, sir.
Just a comment, and I have not looked at this, but from my experience in other organizations and financial background, I've had to run a $60 million portfolio in one group. An investment decision switching between plans or advisors should not be taken lightly. So if you have not kind of fully reviewed, or the treasurer or others have helped in this process, sounds like you had a good presentation, but if you haven't had somebody on the other side of the presentation asking the difficult questions, you potentially could be walking into something that could be as painful as what you have today. So I'm just saying that because I don't know if that's the background of this group or who heard the presentation, but you may just want to give it one more good look. I have unwound a couple of these in my career, and they're just not pretty. So, my 2 cents. I just don't know if anybody here has that background to look at this, and these folks can sound very, very good.
I'm sorry, do we have a motion in the second?
Yeah, we do. Go ahead.
So we're in the discussion
Right.
period. My 2 cents worth would be, I'm very wary, because you said, your first comments, Roger, were, Susan gave me this, I'm not sure.
Well, and as I glanced through this, I began to understand what it is.
Yeah,
And this is something that she and I have been talking about for over 6 months.
I see.
And it's a change that's actually costing me money to not do it. Because Mission Square has resulted in my losing portions of my money that you guys have been authorizing or paying on my behalf as a part of the retirement system.
Thank you. And has our attorney reviewed this? Doesn't look like it?
I have not.
Okay, that is a problem for me as
Sounds like
well.
we should roll it over to next month.
Do we have a financial advisor to weigh in on this?
We have a treasurer. And Vance.
Is there any penalty to delaying this for a month, Roger?
Same penalty I've had for delaying this long.
Okay.
Right.
Regretfully for you.
Well, just
I-
understand that I've been
Yeah.
doing retirement programs as a part of my role in human resources and administration of local government units since 1975. I'm not unfamiliar with how these things work and what some of the options are. I'm also familiar with MERS. It's the program that we use and the people that we use for the COPS retirement system. Theirs is a defined benefit program. This is a defined contribution program. And the objective for those of us who have that option with the village is to get into a program that has the benefit of actually making some money for us.
I've said my piece. I don't
I
like doing
understand that.
contracts without the attorney's review, but, you know.
Okay.
I have no problem. If you guys approve it, subject to attorney review, I can review it within the next couple of days. I reviewed this,
Is
but
there an impact on the village's finances making this change?
Who does it impact?
I'm
Just
sorry?
employees?
It's the employees.
That's right.
Including the police?
No.
All employees? Okay, just
So
the
this is
officers?
basically
Let's
the-
vote on it, subject to, I'll amend,
The motion, yep.
motion to include,
Subject to-
review by our legal, advisor and
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
So we got Pam a no and everybody else yeses, I guess that's it. Okay, last item on the agenda, Roger, I guess there's a new application from Extenet. You want to explain that?
The Extenet folks have submitted the second of the efforts to install a unit on 13 Mile.
Okay.
In the vicinity of where we were before. It's a slightly different location, and it needs to go to planning for their review according to our rules on this particular kind of application.
So do we need a motion to
Refer it to planning,
refer this?
We don't need to see it first before we refer it?
because it's gonna come back to you after planning does. their
motion to
review.
refer the Extranet Systems app to the planning commission.
Is there a second? Okay.
What's the
Mr.
timetable
Bankman.
on it? Just wanted to,
Next meeting.
no, I mean, when does it need to come back to council?
I don't know that.
Okay.
We
I
can
don't-
chat. We have 14 days to determine whether the application is complete. My understanding it was. So this is village council referring it to you, and then we can discuss, because I do have this, I'll send it to you, Brad, send it to Chris before, but I'll forward you the email that kind of gives a timeline of what needs to be done.
Okay, yeah, because we
I thought
don't
it was
meet
90
next week. We
days,
meet in
no?
21
I
on the
think you have
21st.
plenty of time.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to refer this to planning commission. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.